Hey guys, Matthew here. Just a little bit about this episode. We recorded it prior to the Academy Awards, so a lot of the information that we're talking about regarding Academy Award nominations and ultimately who may win, who may not win, our general malaise and disappointment with the Academy, that is all prior to knowing who the winners were. This was recorded a little while ago, and just due to my slow audio editing with work and everything, it takes us a little longer to get episodes out. So I do apologize. A lot of our opinions on the ultimate winners of the awards are going to come out in the subsequent episode. But I thought it'd be interesting to have this in here. I've debated back and forth about keeping it in or not. I decided to keep it in here just to kind of keep ourselves accountable, and also in case there was anything that we end up saying regarding Academy Award and our own personal opinions on this, that we can have it on the record for fact checking and to kind of hold us accountable. So I did debate taking this section out because it does kind of go on for a little bit, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to listen to. So, all right, on with the show.
She went under the wheels.
How perfected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And today is a pretty standard episode. Have to change it up somehow. Today we
Well done, Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Today we do, well, because there's nothing, I don't think there's anything in theaters that both of us wanted to watch, and there's so much going on kind of around the Academy Awards that I want to talk about, but also because it's the start of 2020, it means we all get to rewire our best of decade movies. So before we jump balls deep into the new decade, we wanted to kind of talk about some of our favorite movies of 2010s, the 10s, the swinging 10s, and like kind of finally put it to bed before the Academy Awards fuck it all up, to put it politely. Yeah. So without further ado, as we have started the majority of our other episodes, Gabe, what have you been watching since the last time we recorded?
Not much, actually. I watched Barry Lyndon for the first time, and the movie's really good. You know, obviously, it's ultra stylish, like it's a really good looking movie. I know Ryan O'Neal got a lot of flack for his performance in that movie, but other than his Irish accent, which sounds more fake than Cameron Diaz and Gangs of New York, his performance is actually really good. I mean, the whole movie is very restrained emotionally, which almost gets played for laughs at certain points, where people are just like so restrained in a moment that should be very intense, or like in another movie made at that time would be very intense, that it's almost comedic. I mean, the whole movie has kind of this comedic undertone to it, even though it is pretty bleak. But yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's worth watching just for the zooms. There's so many amazing zooms, which are my favorite camera move of all time.
It's funny because like zooms, I feel like are the most underrated move in modern cinema. A zoom, I feel like we haven't seen very many good zooms lately.
The most recent movie I can think of to have really good zooms is The Killing of a Sacred Deer,
Which I didn't see.
Yeah, that's the only movie in really recent memory that has great zooms in it. Because I mean, Denis Villeneuve and Roger Deakins like to do dramatic push-ins, but people who know the difference know that zooms are not at all like a push-in or a pull-out. And I think I understand why zooms don't get used much. They have a way of kind of alienating you from the action, because not only is the distance changing, but like your depth perception gets fucked up
Right.
as you move closer or further away from whatever the camera's centered on. Right. So that has that tendency to subconsciously pull people out of the movie, or at least that's the stigma that zooms have. But
it's that, and it's the fact that people use it in video record, like in camcorders. Everyone uses it there, so it looks kind of tacky if not done well.
Yeah, that's true. Barry Lyndon, I think, has probably the best executed zooms I've ever seen because it's not like, oh shit, I have to readjust the shot mid-shot, so I'm going to zoom in on something, like camcorder style.
Yeah.
And it's not like
grass style.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to pretend that this is a documentary and throw in random zooms to make it feel more, quote, realistic kind of zooms. It's like, he's got these big old lenses that just pull in tons of light, and he'll zoom in from like a shoulders up kind of portrait shot to like 150 feet away from the person in a single shot. Or he'll zoom in from 200 feet away to a close-up on the person's face. Like, the amount of distance that these zooms cover is so massive, but it's done at the right speed that it doesn't feel jarring, and it's done in a very methodical and purposeful way. And it's always signaling something. Like, whenever we zoom in from really far out, it's like we've stumbled upon a scene, and now we're being kind of pulled into the interiority of the people in the scene. Mm-hmm. Versus when we're zooming out, it's like we start with someone thinking or feeling something, and then we pull away to see the broader context of what's going on around them. So yeah, people should watch it just for the zooms, man.
Have you ever seen a movie called Lion in Winter with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn?
No, I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
So that's the movie that made me realize one of the reasons everyone kind of stopped doing zooms is because after the zoom lens was introduced, I think in the 60s, like near the tail end of the 60s, mid-60s to tail end, everyone did nothing but zooms. Every single movie has these really dramatic, wide zooms to narrows, So yeah. I think it got to a point where it was like, well, what can we do creatively with it? And it's also a lot harder to use zooms as a tool to help enhance the story, which, like, I haven't seen Barry Lyndon, but I always feel like it can only be used like one of two ways, not counting the vertigo shot. But like, it can only be used like, oh, we need to show how empty he is on the outside, or we need to like show his inner turmoil. Whereas it's a lot easier to like, oh, this slider dolly move looks so good. At the same time, you have a really good zoom shot, and it's just like, yes. Wow. Perfection.
Yeah. I mean, so I understand that like the 70s were kind of the decade of the zoom as a cinematic technique, and then it kind of fell out of favor afterwards. But I think zooms also work really well to display like paranoia or like people watching people. And I think they work really well in thrillers and spy movies.
Yeah.
Because it's a great way to show, like, we have our characters maybe standing in one place, and then over their shoulder across the bay is a skyscraper, and on the 20th floor of that skyscraper is the office of the person they're trying to rob or whatever. And you can create that connection by, like, zooming over their shoulder into the window or something. And it's like, it works better than, you can't really push in across that massive distance. You can, it's just very hard to do well, but it's also like you could have a drone, like you could fire a camera out of a gun at the window and cover that distance in a push-in. But
yeah, or just do Fast and the Furious, ramp the speed up quickly, slow down. Like,
exactly. But it's like the zoom not only allows you to cover that distance in a feasible way, but it also, because it has that warping effect, you go from being, really far away from the building when you're zoomed out to when you're zoomed in, you feel like you're kind of pressed up against the glass.
Yeah. Well, have you seen another good movie that uses a lot of zooms, not all the way through, but through a lot of the movie, is Munich. Steven Spielberg uses a lot of zooms in that one too.
So yeah, a spy thriller is a great place to use zooms.
Mm-hmm. That's exact. I was thinking of that while you were talking about it. I was like, yeah, like in Munich, which is my favorite movie with a bunch of zooms in it. So
I've noticed you bring up Munich a lot in our conversation, so maybe I will just have to cave in and see it.
Have you never seen it?
No, never.
Oh, damn. Okay. I didn't like it the first time I saw it, but I kept going back to it, and like every time I see it, something else clicks. The second time I saw it, it clicked, but every time I see it, there's something new to notice. It's really good. It's like one of Spielberg's last like really good kind of artsy yet popular movies. So, and Ben Burtt did the sound design, so the Star Wars guy doing a realistic movie. It's good. It's weird, but it's good.
I know some really popular YouTuber did a whole thing on the sound design in Munich.
Oh, did he?
I don't remember who it was.
I might be interested in watching it. The behind the scenes feature on the Blu-ray, Ben Burtt goes into some of his sound design, and like he brings in some of his weird sound design, but also some of his realistic ones when he dropped out music in this one part, why he did, how he mixed this and that. You know, all that stuff I geek out over. But I still really want to see Barry Lyndon. Like I know it's a bit of a tough sit for the most part, but I figure it's probably not too hard for you since you watch all that like Tarkovsky stuff and slow movies and that kind of thing.
Slow movies, slow movies are slow, but
very astute.
I watch a lot of them, so I'm not troubled by that. I mean, there are obviously there are bits of Tarkovsky and Kubrick movies where, if the movie isn't totally my cup of tea, I can, it's like, okay, like how many times do I have to see like water drip from the ceiling or whatever?
God, we might have to do an episode on Barry Lyndon if I see. I don't know if that's something that we would even be able to discuss it at full length, because it's weird to me that Kubrick, who is known for his own long dolly shots and eventually Steadicam shots, was able to kind of just like fall into zoom shots pretty masterfully. Like, of course he would, but it's still a little surprising. You look at like Paths of Glory or The Shining and you're like, oh yeah, and then there's Barry Lyndon, like where he just zoomed in on people and everything has a painterly quality to it. So
Oh, that's the other thing that's really cool about Barry Lyndon is there's a lot of shots that are set up to look exactly like, not actual paintings, but like as if they were actual paintings.
I thought the whole thing was done in natural light, and it turns out that it wasn't.
No.
But in order to get that painterly quality, Kubrick would use a lot of candlelight, because that's how the painters painted when they presented it. So it's interesting.
What I think how it worked was he wanted all of the lights that you see on screen or like in the room to be natural light, but he was not against like shining electric lights through windows and like peepholes and stuff.
Cool. Have you seen it? Did you watch anything else?
Well, I watched What Did Jack Do, a short from David Lynch that popped up on Netflix for some reason.
Old short or new one?
It's from like 2 or 3 years ago, but it's David Lynch plays a detective interviewing a monkey about a murder, and the monkey is just like a little, trained monkey that sits there and then has David Lynch's mouth CGI'd over its mouth. So it's just David Lynch talking to himself, and it's so freaking weird. But it's so funny.
Like it's funny and like funny because we're making fun of it, it's funny, or it's funny because it's so weird.
It's so bizarre, there. It's funny. It's so out there, like you can't help but laugh.
I wonder if he was like, if he was just like, I know people keep saying like, oh, you can make a budget with no one, or you can make a movie with no one and nothing, and he's like, I'm gonna put that to the test.
I mean, he pretty much did. Obviously there's more people involved besides him. Like there's trained animals in this movie, but it's a short. It's just so weird because they're like, it's just one talking scene, so it features a lot of David Lynch type dialogue, which is dialogue where David Lynch has this whole philosophy where he's skeptical about language and its ability to convey anything really important or meaningful. So a lot of times characters will speak like in riddles, or they'll speak kind of nonsensically, or they'll use like so much slang that it's hard to figure out what the hell they're saying if you're not kind of wise to whatever all the slang is.
And this is a lot of that.
And this is a lot of that, yeah. Like, it's a lot of very circular conversations, a lot of, like, old-timey slang just thrown in there. Like, one character will ask a question, and then the other character will answer it in a way that's kind of a non sequitur, or may seem like a non sequitur, but it could also be interpreted as, like, a genuine answer. Um,
What is this movie called?
it's called What Did Jack Do?
How long is it?
It's like 15 minutes, I think.
Okay. Well, I'll add that to Burning and Waves as movie recommendation. Well, I don't know if this is a recommendation, but it's weird enough that I want to see it.
Yeah. And then the last thing I saw recently was I watched Pusher 3, because I'd seen the first two a few years ago and never got around to seeing the third one. And actually, the third one I think is the best of the series.
Does that one have Mads in it?
No, Mads is a side character in the first one, and then he's the main character in the second one.
Okay.
And then the third one is about this one drug lord who's kind of a main character in the first movie. He has a cameo in the second movie. And it's about him trying to like kick his addiction while also preparing for his daughter's birthday, which is like this big bash, you know? While he's kind of gotten older since the first movie, and his drug empire is basically crumbling, and he's sort of trying to stay on his feet and not get overtaken by the new generation of criminals. But it's really good. Although there's some, it's interesting because, you know, Nicholas Winding Refn he's sort of become more famous for the Too Old to Die Young style of like really slow, pretty lighting, neon lighting, barely any dialogue, very deliberate camera moves, very weird, very surreal way of filmmaking.
Right.
But all three Pusher movies are like on amphetamines. Like there's just like like everything's handheld, tons of camera movement, just wild spinning around, lots of energy, very like grimy and dirty, super low budget. Like a lot of the violence has to be hidden because they just don't have the budget to support it. So there'll be like a guy getting hit with a hammer in the head, and the camera just moves really fast to hide the hit because obviously they can't they can't afford to do a real stunt.
They couldn't get the fake hammer.
Yeah. But they could afford like tons of fake gore for one scene, which was pretty disturbing to watch. But yeah, it's a really good movie. I think it definitely has like the most engaging character arc out of all three. Because the first one's about a drug dealer who's just like an idiot and keeps trying to bluff his way out of problems only to bluff his way into even bigger problems.
Sounds familiar.
And then this, yeah, kind of, it sounds like Good Times in a way.
Good Times or even Uncut Gems.
Yeah. And then the second one is about kind of a criminal in Mads Mikkelsen who's not the brightest. He's a fuck up, and everyone thinks very little of him. And he's constantly trying to prove to the world that like he's constantly trying to prove his worth, like he's worthwhile as a human being. And then this one is about a guy, like an older guy, taking account of his life and trying to make a change and trying to take care of his family, but being pulled in too many different directions and having too much of his own shit come back on him. So he has to make some tough choices about what his priorities are.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's really good. And I think it's the best Pusher movie, I would say. It's also kind of, even though it is very like energetic and handheld, gritty, a lot of camera movement, there is some like cool lighting stuff in there. But I think it is kind of the last of the early Refn movies, and then Bronson is kind of the transition between that and then Drive and everything that comes afterwards.
I was gonna say, because like I was wondering what the transition movie was, because it's also strange because I was looking at the timeline of Pusher movies. It's like the first one came out in '96, and then all of a sudden they're like, it's been 8 years, let's get a sequel done,
and then immediately after, let's do another sequel.
Bang bang, like wow. Nicholas Winding Refn, weird guy, ultra violent and creepy, and he's in Death Stranding, and it's hilarious.
I know. He's in Death Stranding with someone else doing his voice.
Yeah.
Same thing with Del Toro. He sounds like freaking...
Same thing with Edgar Wright.
Oh, Edgar Wright's in that? I haven't gotten that far.
In it too, yeah. Oh, you're playing it?
Yeah.
Holy shit. How far are you in it?
I think towards the end of chapter 2, so I'm still pretty early on.
You've met Edgar Wright. He's not a major character. He's just one of the guys at the thing. Yeah.
I guess I didn't notice.
Yeah, and so is Jordan Vogt Roberts.
I just thought it was weird that like they have Guillermo del Toro's likeness, but he sounds like
It's like they got a guy with a
like
fake
Ren
Spanish
from
accent.
Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, it's like they kind of went half measured. That's funny that you're playing it. I was gonna say, because that's the thing that's in lieu of watching something quirky or weird, I've been playing a lot of Death Stranding. I have watched movies,
Yeah.
but like Death Stranding has been taking up a lot of my time, too much of my time.
You have to upload to the Chiron network. Stimpy, you idiot.
Look, are you trying to be like Igor or like Robin Williams in that one part in Aladdin?
Who knows, right?
Doing it. Yeah,
So the whole thing with Ren is, I think he's supposed to be like a Mexican Peter Lorre. Like that was the voice that they were going for. So it is the voice that Robin Williams is doing in Aladdin.
it is because the Peter Lorre.
Because
That's
he's
right.
trying to be Peter Lorre. It's always weird going back and watching Peter Lorre movies and realizing he doesn't really sound that bizarre, you know?
But he's got to do it for the movie itself.
Yeah, well,
'Cause
it's just
it's
like
his image.
Well, you watch Casablanca, and yeah, he sounds a little strange, but he's not like super over the top the way a lot of cartoons portray him to be.
Yeah.
You know, he does have a very distinct way of talking, but it's not too weird.
Yeah. So what have you been watching lately?
So I saw Bombshell because I was kind of interested in it. It was better than I thought it was going to be.
Okay.
What's his name? Third Rock from the Sun. John Lithgow. I feel like John Lithgow is generally pretty good in everything he's in, even if what he's in isn't very great.
Yeah.
And so like they put John Lithgow in a fat suit, which was kind of funny, but he's really good. That could not have been easy to do. There's he has to do the scene where, he's like, all right, show me your legs. And someone stands up and is like, all right, do a turn. They're like, I don't want to. It's like, this is television. It's a visual medium. We need to sell this, sell this station. Ooh. So, and then it's like, let me see your legs more. And they have to like pull up the skirt. And of course it's Margot Robbie who's doing this. And she's like trying to pull up the skirt more and more. And he's just kind of like higher, but like not, but he's like really good at like on the line of like, it makes it sound like he's almost masturbating without touching his dick. And yet he's still like completely in control of the situation.
Yeah.
So he does a really good job. And then they got Malcolm McDowell to play as Rupert Murdoch. And that's
kind of perfect.
It was fantastic. His Australian accent was not very good. But as soon as I saw his name in the credits, I was like, oh shit, I know who he's going to be. And they had a bunch of female actresses as like Fox News anchors who were like, oh, I support Roger Ailes. And then, or they're like, oh no, I was never sexually harassed with the dodgy eyes and everything like that. It's kind of like, feels like it's trying to have a mix of like All the President's Men with a bit of like, I'm just going to go for the Big Short kind of like fourth wall breaking, because there's a lot of direct addresses to cameras, a lot of like people looking straight at the camera and stuff.
It's weird that Adam McKay is like this
auteur comedian
cinematic
documentary
style icon.
Yeah. Well,
like,
it's the
people
easy
keep ripping
right
off The
now.
Big Short. It's so weird though. Like that's like people ripping off Talladega Nights because they're like, oh, Talladega Nights introduces so many interesting ideas to the medium. It's gonna set the template for every such movie for the next decade.
Comedy.
Like, well, no one ever said that about Talladega Nights, but and yet The Big Short.
But they kind of did about Anchorman. I mean, Anchorman was kind of...
It's true.
Anchorman kind of started the whole, like, okay, we used to have some improv and comedy before, but now our movies are going to be 90% improv. And then we're going to try and, like, make a movie, around it. I mean, that is literally Judd Apatow's career. If it weren't for Adam McKay, we would not have Judd Apatow, which is kind of depressing. Because I would be fine without Judd Apatow. But that's just...
So what you're saying is, like, Adam McKay is our Francois Truffaut.
No. However, an argument could be made.
He's
really depressing
Kubrick for dumb movies.
I wouldn't say Kubrick. I feel like Truffaut would be a better Like, because Truffaut ended up doing a lot of weird stuff and changing it up movie to movie. Whereas,
true.
I was going to say, whereas Apatow would be like the shitty version of Godard, but that's such an insult to, well, to cinema in
Does
general.
anyone like Godard, though?
I think if you're of a certain generation as a film fan, you are, because I did have one instructor who, right off the top of his head, when it's like, who's your favorite director? It's like Godard, because he broke all the rules and he kept things fresh. And I'm like, well, I haven't seen anything aside from Breathless of his, I don't think. But I'd be really interested to see some of his other stuff, like some of his colored movies.
Oh man, Matt, are we at this again?
Oh God, I can't believe it happened so soon. I haven't seen. We had to get our awkward race moment in somehow. But I want to see some of his color movies, and some of the ones that like he's really famous for. It's also weird that I think he's still directing, and he's got to be pushing like 90 now.
Yeah,
But he's still making.
You should find
projects.
Jean Luc Godard's King Lear, produced and distributed by Canon Films.
Yeah, I do actually kind of want to see that.
That combo just sounds so bizarre, but like
I know.
it demands to be watched.
I know. I just don't know if it's going to be painful to watch.
Probably
Like,
will be. It's Godard we're talking about.
God. I actually genuinely enjoy Breathless. Especially, I didn't realize how much they used jump cuts in it until I was rewatching parts of it, and I was like, oh, holy shit, it's like everywhere, even in moments where it doesn't even matter. What the hell were they thinking? But
One note I wanted to make, talking about people who do interesting things that are worth ripping off. The Pusher movies, they're all good. I would say only the third one kind of approaches being a great movie.
Okay.
But they all have some really interesting. They all have stuff that's like stuck with me. Like there's in the first one, there's a great shot of the drug lord, who's the main character in the third movie, talking threateningly to the main character over the phone. But he's trying to play nice. He's like, hey, just come over, we'll work it out. I know, you're going through some hard times. And then over his shoulder, like his two henchmen are laying sheets of plastic on the floor. And like, I don't know, that scene is all that one shot has always stuck with me. It's like, oh, that's so brilliant.
Yeah.
But one of the things I love about the Pusher movies, one of the things I really love about the Pusher movies though, is that they have a theme song, and they all start with like a cold open, and then they play the theme song, and during the theme song, they have all of the characters shot in like a black room with one light shining top down. And it has their name on the bottom of the screen. So it's like, these are like, and it's only like 5 or 6 like of the main most important characters that are in the movie. But I think that's a really cool thing to do, to like cold open. Then you have a theme song where it's just like, here are the 4 or 5 like most important characters, and they're shot in this really cool way, and these are their names. And then it like gets on with the rest of the actual movie. I'm not a big fan of title sequences in movies, but if there's one way to do it, the Pusher way is the way.
You know what? I was going to use that as a transition into something else I've been watching, because it actually transitions almost perfectly. But I did want to mention, title sequences are so old-fashioned that it's always weird when it appears in like a Bond movie. And you're like, they still are carrying this thing over from 1961.
Yeah.
But I do kind of miss them. Like, I don't need them in every movie, but it's kind of nice to have them. It's like a little bit of, oh, this is fun. Like Mission Impossible kind of has it, but they've been fading that out slowly. But the other movie I saw, The Gentleman, also has a title sequence. I was wondering how Guy Ritchie was going to bounce back after Aladdin. It's funny because we were talking about like incredibly influential filmmakers. I feel like Guy Ritchie is a guy who's been influenced by all of the different filmmakers. And The Gentleman is like kind of like how The Irishman was like a very Scorsese movie. The Gentleman is very much a very Guy Ritchie movie. It's like the whole movie is narrated and told like from past to present, including like unreliable narrator moments here and there.
Oh no.
Yeah, well, it's fun, but like
I know, and it's just like it's so Guy Ritchie.
It's very Guy Ritchie-y. There's even a part where Charlie Hunnam and Hugh Grant are like trying to speak the words of Henry Goulding and that one guy from Succession that I don't know the name of, but he clearly plays gay in the movie. And like they're both talking in Cantonese, and Guy Ritchie and Charlie Hunnam are trying to speak English over their voice reading, and I was like, this is just a very Guy Ritchie thing to do. Like, I feel like he just has this inherent, just to Guy Ritchie it up. But it's a lot of fun. Matthew McConaughey's really good in it. You know, I liked it. I'd give it a witness. Yeah.
Are you generally a Guy Ritchie fan?
I've never watched Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, so we'll start there. Between a Matthew Vaughn film and a Guy Ritchie film, I'll probably be more inclined to watch a Matthew Vaughn film, even though it's a little bit sloppier. But I appreciate Guy Ritchie. I was actually really disappointed that... Okay, let me put it this way. I still like King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, even though that movie is fucking horrible.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't like it, but there's enough moments of things happening, and I like Charlie Hunnam as King Arthur. I think the production design is cool, and I think that some of the Guy Ritchie-y moments are really fun. But with all that said, like, it's not good. It's from a script point of view, it's horrible.
It's not surprising.
No, not especially from a Guy Ritchie film, right? And then I was really disappointed by Aladdin because it's just so generic. They could have had anyone make that movie, and like somehow Guy Ritchie just kind of shat it out. So that's I'm okay with the Sherlock Holmes movies, but you know, he's an interesting guy.
Yeah, I kind of like some of Guy Ritchie's movies in the same way I kind of like some of Matthew Vaughn's movies. Like, I like Matthew Vaughn's X-Men movie that he did, and I like the first Kick-Ass.
I actually liked that. That was the first Matthew Vaughn movie I saw, and I enjoyed it well enough. I don't think it would hold up if I watched it again.
Yeah, and I also like Stardust, which is not a very
Stardust.
Matthew Vaughnish movie, but I still liked it. Yeah, with Guy Ritchie, you know, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels is a pretty good movie. My favorite movie of his is that first Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
But God, Aladdin was a giant steaming pile of shit. Like, it was like, I think I mentioned this on our top 10 of 2019. I think it might have been the worst movie I'd seen. That or it was either that or the Zac Efron Ted Bundy movie. Like, they were tied for being like so awful. I wish I could have my life back that I spent.
Yeah.
That I
can you reimburse me
wasted
for my
on those
ticket?
two. Yeah.
I don't hate the Aladdin movie with the vitriol you do, because I'm more forgiving of these live action Disney remakes, but it's just
no, their existence is a crime.
I agree. I agree. Well, for some of them I agree, but it didn't really leave me like this is bad. It left me like this is just exceedingly disappointing.
Oh no, it's bad. Like, you remember when Aladdin leaps across the rooftop in slow motion while singing and his mouth is moving in regular time?
I don't know what you're talking about. That's awesome. It's like, I don't think you'll have a more Guy Ritchie musical moment. If anything, that moment works. It's all of the weird, like, in-between stuff. Like, you'd think that the musical numbers with, like, Will Smith as the genie, who can literally do anything, would at least try to mimic some of the animated movie instead of all just being in, like, one room and being just kind of, like, generically blandly shot.
Man.
And, like, why are we doing it like this? Like, you know what would be fun? Guy Ritchie snake fight. You know what's not in this movie? Guy Ritchie snake fight. Like, missed opportunities all around on it. So that's why it was more disappointing for me. It's like, a lot of these live action ones are disappointing because the animated ones are so solid, but that one just kind of was like, at least they were on the right path.
I mean, my expectations were incredibly low, but it somehow managed to surprise me with how bad it was.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because the whitest girl in there is actually the most Middle Eastern out of all of the cast members, except for maybe Aladdin. But anyway, two more things I've watched. Now we talk about The Irishman a lot, and one of the things that I liked about The Irishman was the fact that it was on Netflix and I can rewatch it.
Yeah.
It's still, I agree with you, it's still too long for it to just be good. And
Yeah.
I know that every scene, they can trim every single sequence and every single scene in that movie to be just a little bit tighter, and it would probably take 45 minutes off the movie. But
yeah, I'll take your word for it. I don't remember enough.
well, like there's so many scenes of them just talking in circles where it's like you're the little guy, I'm the little guy. The little guy's here. Yeah, the little guy's here, but the little guy has to be here. Yeah, I have to be here. Why does the little guy have to be here? Because he's the little guy. Yeah, I'm the little guy. Oh, so what? Because he's the little guy, he has to be here? Yeah, because he's the little guy. The little guy has to. It's like that happens a lot, and so they could have trimmed there. They could have tightened that up, and they could have made the moment like leading up to when Robert De Niro gets the word that he's got to axe Jimmy Hoffa better, but I still really like it, and I think I like it better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood now. If I could reorder my list, it'd probably be push it up there a little bit higher. Push it up there. And then since the sequence has gone on too long, the last thing is I've been watching The Marvelous Miss Maisel, which seems kind of like a weird thing to bring up in Under the Wheels, but like I think that if you like, it's one of those shows where everything fires on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Because almost every single scene in the show that isn't two people sitting down at like a bench, almost every single scene in the show is people standing up, walking around a room, kind of like a stage play, and a majority of the scenes are shot
1917.
in one. Or like 19, yeah, it's like 1917 with more cuts. But like the majority of the show is shot in long takes. It's got really back and forth dialogue, and the production design is fantastic. So it's a strange movie, and the writing, even though the dialogue is usually pretty good, some of the choices that the characters make seem out of character. However, all of the stand-up routines, because she's like a wife who's becomes a divorcee and then a stand-up comic in the 1960s, and Rachel Brosnahan's really good, and she's really funny as a stand-up comedian. Like I thought that would be the part where I'd be like, "Ugh, this is horrible," but she's actually the jokes she tells are really funny, and she has really good delivery.
Remember when we were in college and someone made a movie that was a Birdman ripoff, but about stand-up comedians, and it had the worst stand-up like imaginable?
I do.
Just these awful, like, because that pissed me off more than anything. It's like, if you're gonna make a movie or a short film about stand-up comedy, you can't have like just painfully unfunny stand-up in it.
But that's what
it has to at least make you chuckle, you know?
That's what happens when you get people who aren't funny to do comedy. People who are so egotistic to think that they're funny enough to do that kind of thing try and do it, and they just kind of fall flat. I still, like, from a conceptual point of view, I can see what they're going for, but then I think, like, this show, Marvelous Miss Maisel, is like, they saw what they did there, and they're like, oh, man, I can do better than that. I can make it about a woman in the 1960s and in New York and completely change the production design. Oh, and if you're a fan of Monk, did you watch Monk, or are you a fan of Tony Shalhoub?
I mean, I had seen like 1 or 2 episodes of Monk ages ago.
Well, then never mind. Are you a fan of Kevin Pollak?
Who?
Anyway, we'll move on.
Is Kevin Pollak one of those actors like that dude from Ford v Ferrari where I didn't know who he was? I just thought he kind of looked like Michael Sheen.
Kind of.
Josh Lucas.
Have you seen A Few Good Men?
That's the guy. No.
Oh, it's a good movie. Well, then never mind. I was gonna say he's the guy who's not Tom Cruise and not Demi Moore and not Jack Nicholson, who's Tom Cruise's partner-in-law in that movie. But
okay.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So I do want to talk about the Academy Awards because I'm just like completely disappointed, and I can actually go through every single category and just declare who the winner is.
You're disappointed? Oh, you poor fool. Your expectations were too high.
No, my expectations were pretty low, and I'm still disappointed.
I know how you feel. I was go ahead.
Let me give you an example. Production design. Achievement in production design nominees. The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Really? That's bad. That's bad. First off, the winner of this movie is not The Lighthouse, who it should be, so it's irrelevant. So that category, stupid. I was thinking about makeup because, well, I'll just hop on this quickly. I was thinking about Best Achievement in Makeup, and 1917 was nominated, and I was like, why the hell is 1917 nominated? And then there's that moment where that one guy who always dies and everything gets knifed by the one German pilot, and he like dies in real time, and you can see the color leave his face. Yep. I think you brought it up in our top 10, and I was like, oh yeah, I could see why that would win. Yeah. I would totally. Yeah.
No, yeah, that sequence was really well done. Although you can kind of tell, like, because
you can tell where they started putting the makeup on and then digitally.
Well, yeah, because
the rest of his face.
Yeah, because I mean, when the dude who survives walks away from the German pilot and comes back to the German pilot, there's a cut in there, and then just in between, they make up the other dude to look like he's dead, and then have him die.
I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't cut there. I wouldn't be surprised if they had crew rush on, put a bunch of white on his face, and then digitally do it the rest of the time. Because I should say, what else have I been watching? I did see 1917 between when we recorded last and now. Which, by the way, like some of the masked cuts in 1917 are really bad. Like
some
really bad CG.
Some are really good though.
A lot of them are really good.
Mix. Yeah, because there are some that are amazing, but there are
some that have a weird like jittery thing going on.
Best sound editing: Star Wars: The Rise of. Go fuck yourself.
Shall we just dive in category by category, or did you have something you wanted to note on?
I don't know. It's just I try not to look at these things because I swore off the Oscars in whenever True Grit came out.
Ooh, yeah. Which True Grit? I feel like True Grit is underrated.
Oh, totally. I swore off the Oscars in 2011 when The King's Speech won Best Picture over True Grit because I thought that was the biggest travesty imaginable.
That's hilarious. We have different opinions on that, but yeah.
Oh, how naive I was, because just as, 5 years later, I decided to give the Oscars another shot because Mad Max Fury Road is up for a bunch of awards.
Oh.
I'm like, okay, maybe they can finally get it right and redeem
You wonder how many times your heart can break.
And they gave all the awards to fucking Iñárritu, and then, goddamn, Spotlight. Fuck that movie and everyone involved with Spotlight. All right, that movie, that movie never needed to be made. Okay, it's an article in a newspaper. It's public domain. You can read it. I don't need a movie about something I can read about on Wikipedia.
I kind of liked Spotlight, but I understand where you're coming from. And
so then after 2015, I said, Oscars are meaningless. I will never watch another ceremony. I will never allow myself to get too hyped for anything. I will just resign myself to mild disappointment every single year, which is the emotion I have right now. It's mild disappointment and strong confusion.
I was many standard deviations below mild disappointment when the list came out. I was actively disturbed, upset, and I had to tell everyone about how purely disappointing the Academy Awards were this season. Our mutual friend who told us about the Academy Awards, our old recording mate Austin, he posted, and I was like, well, yeah, but it's Austin. He's always bitching and moaning about the Academy. Whatever, nothing new. Until I didn't think that the awards could be as bad as they were. Like, thank God that Parasite is just like on every list, because it cheapens it a little bit, but thank God it's there. I mean, if it wasn't there, and again, I think I know who's going to win Best Picture, but if Parasite wasn't there, I would just feel like there is no justice in Hollywood.
Parasite is the one kind of
bright spot.
Well, it's the one shred of credibility that these awards have. It's like the only, other than maybe 1917, so far as I can tell, it's the only movie that really deserves to be in that conversation.
And which movie do you think is going to win?
I mean, I'm hoping Parasite wins, but...
Knowing how just freaking awful Hollywood is.
I mean, I would not be surprised if they gave it to like Joker or The Irishman, just because it's like or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because it's like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's about Hollywood. Let's all just gather in a big circle and jerk each other off. Yay. Joker, we're socially relevant. Let's all get in a big circle and jerk each other off. Yay. Irishman, we love Martin Scorsese. He's old. We're old. Let's all be old together and jerk each other off. Yay.
I will tell you right now, I think 1917 is going to win.
You know, that I don't think that is the best movie of the year, but I would be okay with that. Again, my expectations are super duper low, so that's not really saying much, but...
Movies that should feel happy that they're even on the list: Ford v Ferrari. Little Women kind of stumbled onto the list. I'm glad it's on there, but it feels like the diversity hire. I like
weird that
I like it a lot. I like it a lot, but it seems like it was like, okay, we have to campaign and have one that one and Jojo Rabbit. Just
Jojo Rabbit's the most baffling one.
If Jojo Rabbit can get on there, but something like The Lighthouse can't, it's a little like perplexing to me, especially but I think a lot of people are hoping Joker wins, so it's going to be a lot like the year Avatar was nominated, and then everyone like slit their wrists when The Hurt Locker won, including Catherine Bigelow. My movie won.
I was so happy when that movie won.
I think at the time I was like, why the hell did The Hurt Locker win? Like, they should have gone with the popular choice, because the Academy is like a struggling, dying artifice of years gone by, and they need a fresh injection of... They don't care. No. The Academy just doesn't care.
So here's what I think. I think that the Academy should be like the vanguard of quality. You know what I mean? You would think. They're not, but that's what they should be. It should be the vanguard of quality, innovation, and creativity. Things that push the medium of filmmaking forward, that are exciting, things that are different, things that are special, are the things that they should be celebrating. Instead, they are torn between being incredibly conservative to the point where they hold up like the only guaranteed way to win is to make a movie like it's 1934. And we're still in old Hollywood, so then every crusty, withered skeleton husk of a person that votes for the Academy
can be like, yeah, I remember when they used to make movies like that. That is my vote. It's prestige. It's a good...
like, people who call movies pictures, like, the kind of movie that they would like. You have to make that if you want to win. Or, there's a crowd that's like, well, we should pick something that's really popular, so that people will think we're relevant.
But they don't do that. They don't pick
and they shouldn't.
Movies.
They shouldn't ever pick a popular movie just because it's popular. Because here's the thing. Popular tastes are determined by supply. People will eat up and enjoy what is out there.
True.
Right? People take what you give them. So if
sometimes.
Yes, this is marketing 101. They would take what you give them. If all that's out there, if all people are aware of is big, loud, stupid, superhero movies, that's what they're going to eat up. That's what they're going to think is normal. They're conditioned to believe it's normal. They're conditioned to believe this is movies, this is entertainment, this is what I want. If every movie out there was some bizarro David Lynch, Nicholas Winding Refn, Lighthouse type of thing, where it's a weird, disturbing, surreal movie.
That we've been in the 70s.
If everything out there was like that, or if everything in being pushed towards consumers was like that, then people would be conditioned to accept that as this is what filmmaking is, this is what movies are like, this is what I'm going to go see this weekend, this is what I want. People want what they know is out there, you know what I mean?
Right.
No one's pining for something they've never heard of or never thought about.
So I wouldn't have a problem. So first off, the Academy doesn't do that. And when they do that, they epically fail. But I wouldn't have a problem with that if the movies that they were nominating for Best Picture represented the state-of-the-art, best version of that super popular movie. But then you get something like Joker, which again for the majority of people, happier that it's Joker and not Avengers Endgame, and that's fine. But I would say that you should have omitted both of them. Because it's just the biggest insult to have Joker nominated for Best Picture when there's a handful of other movies out there that are equally deserving, if not more so.
Yeah. Well, again, they want it to be in the running, so it attracts casual eyes. But
It's the worst. It just makes me sick. I'm like, because now it adds a level of prestige and ego to Todd Phillips that he should not have, right? Maybe that's the root of my whole problem with this. But you know, the guy who directed Old School is now like, we can't write comedies anymore, so I'm going to make a dark movie. That's not really
man, Todd
that
Phillips
dark.
Can't write comedies anymore.
Todd Phillips...
There's plenty of comedies out there.
I agree. But that's his quote. He's like, you can't write comedies anymore. And it's like, no, dude. You were just never very good at writing interestingly distinct comedies.
Yeah, it's like, does
your
you have
shit was
any
the same.
idea how many comedians are out there who are like unapologetically offensive and incredibly successful right now?
Yeah.
Like-
But there are a lot of popular ones who have come out and they're like, oh, well, we can't be as offensive as we used to be. And it's like...
Well, that's because they're pussies. They're pussies. Look at
Yeah.
Dave Chappelle. Look at his last special. It was a smash hit. Look at how much trouble he got in, and people love it. He made a shitload of money off of it. Anyone saying you can't do comedy is living in a fantasy land. Comedy
But wasn't his whole special like precedented on the fact that he's not allowed to do comedy anymore the way he used to, and then he proceeded to do comedy the way he used to?
Kind of. I mean, there is an aspect to it where he is intentionally trying to get people riled up and push people's buttons. But I think that's just an extra layer to it. I mean, I think a lot of the best comedians in the world are playing with the idea that Todd Phillips seems to believe. They're playing with it and proving him wrong. You know, he's like,
Right.
Todd Phillips says, you can't do comedy anymore, everyone's too sensitive. So the best comedians in the world, like Dave Chappelle, like Bill Burr, they're going out there and doing stuff like, well, okay, I'm going to be like over the top offensive. I'm going to be as offensive as possible and then turn that into something else. You know what I mean? Use that as a vehicle to discuss the world as it is right now. So I think, you know, it's just because he doesn't know how to work with it. You don't even have to work around it. You can work with it. So he's just like, well, I'm going to make some, you know, shitty internet edgelord movie.
Like, it just reeks of, like, talentless hack getting acclaim. And again, I won't...
And again, Joker's not that bad.
It's I know,
pretty good
and it's
movie,
kind of,
but
it's well, and it's
easy to
kind
shit
of
on
mean
Todd
for me to
Phillips.
just... It's kind of mean for me to just go full hyperbole and be like, Todd Phillips is a talentless hack. Obviously, he's not. There's a reason why, like, he's able to take things like The Hangover and at least make them successful. He does have talent. But it's probably the same way a lot of people felt when The Big Short got nominated for Best Picture. Like,
in
but
fairness
at least
to Adam McKay, his comedies are better than Todd Phillips's.
he not only that, but at least Adam McKay went in a very unique direction with The Big Short. Like, he took material that was boring-ish and tried his darndest to make it the most interesting thing and explain it to you and use every single trick he could. Whereas, no, it'd be too hyperbolic to say what I was going to say. Whereas the Joker is very derivative, and that's fine.
That's true.
But in your very derivative movie, don't like take a shit and pretend your shit don't stink, and that it was someone else's burger that you ate. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean that's my big beef with Todd Phillips generally, is that he has made some pretty good movies. I still really like the first Hangover. I think Joker's pretty solid, but he doesn't seem to have much of a voice or anything interesting to say, or he doesn't bring much to the table in the way that, like, you know, we tend to think of great artists bringing something interesting and new or relevant to the table. It's just sort of, well, let's see what the focus group studies show would work. Yeah, okay, I think I can do that. Bing, bang,
There's a
boom.
reason why
Here's the Joker.
There's a reason why the sequel to The Hangover was exactly like the first Hangover, but not as good.
Yeah.
Like, that should have been the sign. But But again, I guess I wouldn't have a problem if people weren't like, oh, this is the art movie of the century. And it's like, it's not. It's really
not an art movie.
It's not an art movie. It's pretending to be one. It reminds me a lot of like of A Star Is Born, how everyone was like, oh, this movie is like, it's real, and it's because the cinematography is handheld and it's shaky, which, by the way, the cinematography in A Star Is Born is awesome. But it's trying to like evoke, this sort of like indie spirit. And it's the same with the Joker. When I think about the Joker, it's like it's trying to evoke this like indie spirit or this 1970s vibe of like, this is the real world and it's dark out there and it's depressing and it's... No, the movie literally ends with Joaquin Phoenix dry humping the air. Like, what kind of statement are you putting out there? So
it's funny because I heard, I swear to God, I heard somewhere someone described Joker as low budget, and I'm like, bro, this was made for $70 million.
Yeah,
Lighthouse was made for $4 million.
Low budget.
Exactly.
God, it's my God, and Lighthouse is just so much better in every way.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is I think a lot of people, a lot of filthy casuals, don't really understand what low budget actually is. Like less than 100 million may seem like low budget, or less than like 50 million may seem like low budget, but it's like, dude, frickin' Blue Ruin was made for like $400K, and it's better than most of these movies out there.
Yeah, Blue Ruin's amazing. Like, it's weird because 4 million isn't low budget. 4 million is borderline no budget.
Yeah, well, the Blue Ruin was made for $400,000.
Yeah, that's no budget. That's
no budget. It was made like Jeremy Saulnier took out a second mortgage on his house, and that's how he paid for it.
I mean, hey man,
and called in like every favor, and it's just like, dude, if your entire financing is a second mortgage on your house,
and you like, dude, hey, talk about a gamble that paid off.
I know, seriously.
Okay, here's another problem with the Academy. Because I was just scrolling through the list. Best International Feature Film of the Year. I don't even have to read the names. You know which one's gonna win.
Oh yeah, well, it's like if you have it, if one of those is nominated for Best Picture, it's going to win Best International.
They theoretically could throw a wrench in it because everyone votes on Best Picture, whereas only the people in that group vote for the individual film nominees. But it's almost like a slap if suddenly Corpus Christi wins over Parasite.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like whenever a pitcher is a finalist for the MVP, like he's already won the Cy Young.
He's won Cy Young, yeah. Okay, here's a question for you. Achievement in film editing nominees. We have Ford v Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, and Parasite. This is the one category where I feel like if Ford v Ferrari doesn't win, it's an insult.
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think like the editing in Parasite's really good, but it's nothing outstanding.
I would say that for all of these movies except for Ford v Ferrari.
Editing in Joker is really good, but it's nothing outstanding. Yeah, Ford v Ferrari has great editing. The Irishman, I'm really torn because it's like it's really well edited in the sense that it's so hard to edit a 3.5 hour movie that is still entertaining and interesting and exciting and has you want to keep watching the way that it does. But the question you can always ask is, well, yeah, but if the editing was so great, couldn't they have just made it shorter?
Marty and I wanted it to feel like you were literally aging as Robert De Niro was during the movie. We wanted you to feel like an 80-year-old. Mission accomplished, I guess, but give me more of that Ford v Ferrari driving high. Like
I know,
that.
It's just, so I feel bad kind of for The Irishman because it is like a no-win with a 3.5 hour movie. Like it is so hard, and it is such an accomplishment to edit a 3.5 hour movie and make it really good. But at the same time, it's like if you were really that good, it wouldn't be 3.5 hours.
And not only that, but it's like, but again, we're talking about a movie that's pretty good. Like so. Oh God, yeah. the Academy is baffling. I'm disappointed by almost every single nomination,
Yeah.
especially in the technical awards.
Well, the technical awards are always strange because it always seems like they're sort of thoughtless. Like a lot of people who
You and I come at this differently. Then go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the way the technical awards often come off to me is it's like, most people out there don't really know how movies are made. And I think a lot of people in the movie industry don't know the real details of how movies are made either. So they have very strong opinions on Best Picture, Best Actor, maybe even Best Director, Best Score, and Best Script. But everything else is kind of like an afterthought. It's like Best Cinematography, I don't know. Joker looked kind of cool.
Cinematography's become one of those categories, I think, in most people's minds where they're like, oh yeah, I know the big five, and then cinematography because it's what we see on the screen.
Yeah, but it's like, even then, though, I think a lot of people don't know what it's like to actually shoot a film, to handle a camera, to select your shots, to, what different angles and distances and camera moves could mean and the effect they might potentially have on the final product of the movie. So I think a lot of those opinions are kind of like, it's like armchair quarterback type shit, where it's like, he should have thrown to Davis. Davis was wide open. It's like, you're not on the fucking field. You don't know what he's seeing. You can't even throw a fucking football. What are you talking about? I think that's where a lot of the technical awards fall in, where it's like people who don't know what sound editing means and how it's different from sound mixing.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Are asked to vote on what movie of all the movies this year had the best sound mixing and which movie had the best sound editing. And I don't want to be like too condescending because I'm not 100% clear on what the difference is between the two. So it's like, I watch a lot of movies. I know a lot about how movies are made, but I'm not totally sure what the difference is. So if you don't, listener, don't feel bad about it. But the people who vote on these things should know the difference, and I'm not convinced that they do.
So I was going to say that I feel like the technical awards are actually the last bastion of safeguard in the Academy, because the technical awards are where all of the most impressive movies of the year are actually nominated, except maybe this year. Really Joker, sound mixing, sound mixing and sound editing, really Joker.
You gotta remember, the technical awards are the ones that gave Suicide Squad more Oscars than The Master.
Oh God, God. I remember I was like, oh yeah, the makeup was good in Suicide Squad because they had to make all of those, they had to dress up Harley Quinn and they had to put all those tats on that one guy. And then someone's like, yeah, did you think it was better than Star Trek Beyond? And I was like, no.
Exactly.
No, that's true. So, but at least Star Trek Beyond was nominated. That's what I mean about the technical awards. Like, Ad Astra is technically an Academy Award nominated movie for its sound mixing. You'll find some of the more interesting movies sneak into the technical awards, except for this year.
It's funny. I'm looking at Best Cinematography, and I would knock out The Irishman, and I would put Ad Astra in there, kick out The Irishman, Joker, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, but you can't kick out. So one, you can't kick out The Irishman because they filmed it without using dots on their faces. What was the second one? Joker. Oh, you can't kick that one out because it's so gritty and realistic. No, I'm with you on both of those. I'm even with you on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, especially because they film a TV episode like it's supposed to be a movie. I'm like, that doesn't happen. What the fuck? See, that's where they...
Especially
that's where
a
they
1960s TV episode.
Yeah.
Because I would say, of the movies I've seen this year, the best photographed were probably The Lighthouse, Ad Astra, 1917.
1917 is going to win.
1917 will win, probably.
Oh, wait, The Lighthouse is nominated.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
It's the only nomination they got. Yeah.
I can't believe it was nominated. That's awesome. Well, that should win, but it won't.
And then I think Parasite was very well photographed. I think Under the Silver Lake was very well photographed.
Yeah, that one was interesting.
Uncut
Well,
Gems was very well photographed, so it's like
It would have been
kinda that
interesting if they
mix.
threw like an animated movie in there, because those are starting to get to the point where they're almost shot like real movies. But it's kind of
but
cheap
I don't think
because
it
it's-
counts because you can design everything to be exactly how you want it. There's no you're not wrestling with anything to get the perfect shot. You know what I mean? You just create
Well-
the perfect shot in a computer.
While I know that, and like I totally get it, and I totally understand that's why they didn't do it, for a long time they couldn't actually have the photographic effects that they have in actual movie cameras. So the fact that they can simulate them,
Are you talking about like focus pulling and stuff?
we'll start with bokeh, focus pulling, actual like realistic camera moves, lens density, lens bulge, those kinds of things, different depths of field. Or not depths of field, different, shoot. I can't even think of the word now, but when, like, the way that in a zoom lens, like, you can notice that the bulge goes away as you zoom in, or if you put on, like, a 50 millimeter lens and an 18 millimeter lens, the 18 millimeter lens has bulging on the side, the 50 is flat, and the 85 is just, like, looking at a piece of rice paper. Like, they didn't have that technology when they started making animated movies. And you have to, like, if a split diopter shot is enough to win the Academy Award for Best Cinematography, or like the Vertigo shot is, if it's achievement in cinematography, just because you can stage everything perfectly in an animated film, because it's not actually shot like a traditional film, does not mean that it should not be disqualified from it. I know that's not a popular opinion, and it's really just kind of thrown out there to be dramatic. But but
Trying to start
like
some shit.
I mean, well, think about how many movies are generated in computers now. Like the majority of big budget blockbuster movies are generated in the computer. The Irishman had to simulate all of the lighting on the main characters, so that had to be scanned in, put into a computer, digitally altered, on top of digital alterations. I mean, I don't know. It's like, I get it, but it's weird. Like, my point of view on this with animated films is strange because it is kind of unfair to give something where you can create the perfect shot every time,
Yeah. Well,
like
the other
an
thing, it's
award.
like,
But
I don't think it could ever be nominated for Best Cinematography, but I think you could, because the argument that I would then make is, you know, if you're saying this should be nominated for Best Cinematography because, like, it's very well, like, all the shots are really well put together and that they tell the story really well and they do a lot of work very effectively, I would say then, well, you should just nominate it for Best Director then.
which I think is something that it would be nice if that eventually happens. It never will, but
Because
But,
like if you can create every shot in a computer and you don't really have to, again, you're not using a camera, you're not using people, you're not using real environments, you're not actually photographing anything. You have essentially digital sculptors building something inside an engine.
right.
I think then if the visual storytelling is really excellent and you want to reward that, you would nominate it for Best Director.
Give it to Best Director. But here's the thing, because like Missing Link is nominated for Best Animated Feature Film, but that falls into all of the categories of like, well, they had to shoot it with an actual camera. They had simulated camera movements, but they had camera movements with a real camera. It wasn't digitally manipulated. So like that theoretic, and it's a lot harder to shoot a stop motion movie than any other movie, I'm pretty sure. But again, Samantha, like, I get it. I get why it's not in there. I understand. I'm just being difficult. But like, I mean, like, with the list that we have this year, you might as well throw like Missing Link or Toy Story 4 in there. You know? Why the fuck not? You know, like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, man.
Again, God damn it! At least Ford v Ferrari's in film editing. One last thing here. I'm actually genuinely upset about music written for motion pictures, because like the list isn't amazing. It's pretty good. Like Joker,
Best original song or best original score?
best score.
Okay.
Joker has an interesting soundtrack. Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I'll be honest, I don't remember any of the music from Marriage Story.
I don't remember any of the music from any of those movies.
Little Women with Alexander Desplat. It's very much what you would expect from Alexander Desplat, right? 1917, it sounded like Skyfall, and then it sounded like The Shawshank Redemption, and there you go. but like having Rise of Skywalker in there, having Joker and Rise of Skywalker in there is just like, what are you guys thinking? Like, why those two movies? Just because it's John Williams? Because Spielberg doesn't have a movie coming out this year, dude? Like, it's baffling. Normally, score is like a really good category, and this year it's just very disappointing.
I mean, the only scores that stuck out in my mind as being
The Lighthouse?
like good in a noteworthy way. Not The Lighthouse, but the ones that stuck out as being really good when I saw the movie was like Under the Silver Lake from Disaster Piece. Ad Astra's score, I don't know who did that, but I thought that was really good.
Oh,
especially because it just kind of simmers on your periphery, you know?
Yeah.
And then I thought the score for Uncut Gems was really good as well. I'm a big fan of Daniel Lopatin, and I thought that his score for Good Time was... I mean, I still listen to it just on its own, because it's that good. And it's a shame that he didn't get any attention for it, but
yeah,
you know, I'm glad to see that he's
movie
doing
didn't get
another
any
movie.
attention. It's baffling. It was done. The music for Ad Astra was done by Max Richter.
Okay, yeah, Max Richter.
He's
excellent
really good.
work. Ad Astra was-
He's really good. You should listen to
Yeah.
some of his original pieces if you like. Like I think you would like his original stuff too. Like it was an inspired choice.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like those three, and I'm also a big fan of Disaster Piece's music, just broadly speaking. But yeah, those three movies, it stuck out to me as having the best, you know, incidental music. The rest was all, you know, it's just movie music. Movie music is a genre, and I think all of the nominees here just sort of fit that genre.
I will say this: 1917, the music kind of reflects the rest of the movie. Where like, I like 1917, but 1917 could be about any war at any time, and there's nothing in 1917 aside from the trenches that make it specific to World War One, and there's nothing about the music in 1917 that puts it squarely in World War One. It's a score that could be used for any movie at any time. And so that's like, it's weird how reflective of the movie it is. Yeah. Little Women's score is really good though. It really it matches the movie really well.
Do you remember if the score for 1917 has like, have you seen The Thin Red Line?
Not all the way through, and when I started watching it like 10 years ago, so I don't remember any of the score.
So there's a piece of music in The Thin Red Line called The Journey to the Line, and it's really famous because frickin' Hans Zimmer recycled it, as he does, for Inception, and it's the big swelling musical piece at the end of Inception when like all of the most dramatic things are all happening together at once.
Okay.
So I was trying to remember if 1917 had its own Journey to the Line kind of rip off.
It probably did, but again, to me, it sounded more like American Beauty and The Shawshank Redemption. Like it sounded like which Newman did that one? I don't remember. Whichever Newman did it. Oh, Thomas Newman was recycling his own music at that point. Which, you know, it happens, but it felt like Thomas Newman was recycling Thomas Newman. Mm-hmm. But he's really good, and he might win. But I would be baffled if Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker won, and the only reason I can see that winning is because John Williams is old.
Well, you know, the Academy likes to reward people for their service. So, like, if you're in the industry for long enough, an award will be dropped into your lap for one reason or another. Like, you remember when Art Carney won Best Actor over, like, Michael Corleone in The Godfather?
Oh my God, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, poor Al Pacino. Al Pacino. That's by the way, like, I remember there was a time when no one thought that Scarlett Johansson was actually a good actress. And now she's double nominated. Like, what? What? Like, not, she's Not that she's not good. She's really good in Marriage Story. I haven't seen
is.
Jojo Rabbit. But, like, are you sure you couldn't nominate someone else? Like, really? There weren't any better performances in supporting actresses? Really?
I mean, you know, Scarlett Johansson's always been good, but never amazing or anything. You know what I mean?
I will amend that to say Scarlett Johansson has always been okay. Some roles better than others, but she's kind of like Emma Watson, where like the better director you have, the better she is in it. I would say, like her performance scales with her director.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, there's plenty of actors who, well, I would say most creative people in general their career is gonna be a mixed bag, and their best stuff is gonna be their best stuff because they happen to be in the right situation when they were making it.
Hey man, I'm just gonna say it, John Lithgow. I've never been disappointed by John Lithgow, and he was in the George Miller sequence in the Twilight Zone movie. So.
I said most creative people. There are some exceptions, like John Lithgow, apparently.
No, I'm sure he's been in shit, but he always turns something solid in. Anyway, we can move on from this. I just needed to bitch and moan about it for a little bit.
Okay, that's understandable. I mean, I think, you know, the Academy is always disappointing in its choices. They always make bad choices. But it's worth reminding ourselves that they make shitty choices on a consistent basis. And also not to take them too seriously, because it's, at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's an insider circle jerk. You know, it's an industry awards show to congratulate people within the industry. You know, it's like, I don't know, it's like how any other kind of convention of people who all work in the same field will award each other shit that to most people doesn't matter. Like, I'm sure there's awards for lawyers and for financial professionals and fucking plumbers, you know, like, because there's all these, you know, there's for every job, there's an association of people who do that job, and they will inevitably have a convention, and at that convention, someone will get an award. That's how at least America works. So, you know, this is just the movie version of that, and I don't think, you know, it's wasteful to get too worked up over it, just because it is kind of meaningless, but understandably frustrating, because, you know, some of these choices are pretty bad.
Well, I agree with you, and I think, though, it's different than other awards because it's hit a certain saturation point. Like,
yeah,
you know, we don't talk about the BAFTAs, which, by the way, whoever wins Best Picture in the BAFTAs, I think, is going to win Best Picture here. For those at home who give two shits. But I really think 1917 is just going to sweep everything unless there's some sort of really weird come from behind victory for like Parasite or Joker or something like that. But the networks make a big deal about it. The internet makes a big deal about it.
Well,
and
the internet makes a big deal about everything.
True.
The internet is an engine designed to make a big deal out of things.
But you don't see this level of like we need validation from the Golden Globes. You don't see it from the BAFTA, at least not in America. You don't see it from SAG or the DGA Awards, which I feel like the DGA Awards are a much better indicator of what should be those gatekeepers. But I think you nailed it on the head when you said that it's an awards ceremony where the whole thing revolves around people who you think are supposed to be putting the best and the highest honor, like protect the integrity of the movie making, and they just don't. Mm-hmm. And it's still always disappointing every time it happens for me. I'm not cold and dead like you.
Like I said, man, I was a little kid when I just lost all faith in the Oscars and never recovered.
Most people did it when it happened when Saving Private Ryan lost to Shakespeare in Love.
Well, I don't think I was even born then?
98.
Oh, so I was 3. That doesn't really. I was too young to really be aware.
God.
You know, it's funny because the first time I ever actually watched the Oscars was 2003, I was, again, a little kid, but my favorite movie was Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. So when it won Best Picture, I was like, it sent me the completely wrong message. It sent me the message of the Academy Awards are legit. They do give the Best Picture to the best movie. Gosh, that really set me up for 10 years of disappointment, but...
Yeah. Well, can you believe how lucky we were that a movie of that high quality and caliber actually did all of the things, It won, the trilogy was validated, the world makes sense again, great things will happen. And then someone comes up to you and they're like, I thought Return of the King was too long and it should have ended early. And you're like, nope, there is no hope in the world. Yeah. Well, I wonder, do you feel like Return of the King suffers from the Irishman syndrome, where it doesn't feel tight? Because at this point, I can't see down from up on Return of the King. I think it's practically perfect. The extended cut, I should say. So I'm even further in the woods.
Every person I have ever discussed the Lord of the Rings movies with has one of two possible responses, and I have yet to meet anyone with a third. It's either the Lord of the Rings movies are among the greatest movies ever made, or the Lord of the Rings movies are not my cup of tea. I don't like them, and I don't ever want to see them again. It's one of those two, nothing in between. I've never heard someone say, "Oh, they're okay," or "Oh, it was pretty good, but it would be better if it was shorter." I've never heard any of that stuff before.
It's literally the Death Stranding of movies. It's a walking simulator that people either love or hate. Obviously, Lord of the Rings is not just that, and neither is Death Stranding. But that's when you were saying that, I was like, you're right, dude. Everyone I know either really likes them, or if they're friends of mine who grew up with me, they're like, oh, okay, Matthew likes them, so they must have some prestige value. And I'm like, yeah, they do. So you better like them.
I mean, the thing is, I should also say, is everyone I know who doesn't like them just isn't into fantasy movies in general. The genre is not appealing to them. That's kind of what happens. Or they don't like the very Tolkien-esque sort of fantasy. They might like fantasy elements, but only elements sprinkled. They don't want it super high fantasy like Tolkien. Yeah, it's just the genre is a turnoff more so than the movies. Or, they just don't like long movies, for example, is another issue.
Common complaint.
Yeah. So it's if people who just generally don't like long movies don't like Lord of the Rings.
I don't know. I hate the fact that I feel like my movies need validation from the Academy to be good.
I mean, it would be nice if for good things to be recognized and held up as an example of a good thing, but
maybe it'll win maybe our movies will win Independent Spirit Awards. They didn't.
Independent Spirit Awards.
I feel like those are the only awards A24 is going to win. They clearly don't give two shits about marketing the good parts of it. I'm pretty sure
it's
the cinematographer.
Weird.
Go ahead.
It's weird. They don't care about marketing their movies at all, which is so bizarre because their movies make really good money versus their budgets, and they get a lot of acclaim from audiences and critics, and probably could win awards if they tried. They freaking won Best Picture with Moonlight 2 or 3 years into their existence or something.
They might just want to be the actual gatekeepers of high quality, kind of offbeat movies. Not offbeat in the cool hip offbeat, but offbeat in the why are all of your movies about people who have been raped offbeat? Why are all of your movies dark and dramatic offbeat? I don't know. Every time I see a trailer that's cut a certain way, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the A24 style of a movie being cut. It feels a little bit like an international the way that they cut international trailers for prestige audiences. It shows the main characters. It has a strange font to it. It's basically like watching the opening of Yorgos Lanthimos movie. That's what the trailers seem like to me for A24. So they hit.
I like how you call him Yorgos Lanthimos.
I know. I had to I couldn't remember his name. So I had to just like throw out some words quickly and be like, I hope he doesn't fact check me on it. How is it actually pronounced?
Lanthimos.
Yeah, God. I've got Lanthimos, Yorgos Lanthimos, sir.
Oh, yeah, it's whatever. He probably doesn't give a shit.
Probably not. I'm actually
he probably
surprised
gets it
he
all the
didn't have a movie
time
for
from people in Hollywood.
Yeah, if this were the 40s, he would have changed his name by now.
Oh yeah,
To, like-
he'd be like Yancey Latterman or something.
Yancey Yancey Letterman, that'd be funny. Are you related to David? Huh?
This is the 40s. Is David even famous?
Or he'd change his name just completely and just be like Mick, I don't know, Mick Stereo or something.
He could do a Kirk Douglas.
Yeah, exactly.
type of
That's who I
thing.
was thinking of.
It's like Isur Danielovich to Kirk Douglas. Like, I don't know how you get that. Or the other weird one is Archibald Leach to Cary Grant.
Yeah.
You know what's
No
weird?
one's going to go to a movie with the name Archibald in it.
Yeah, well, it's weird because I always get Cary Grant and Clark Gable mixed up because it's both CGs.
Yeah.
But it's always weird
Clark
because
Gable was the closet homosexual. Anyway,
I thought that
go
was
on.
Cary Grant.
Oh, God. Really? Wow.
I don't know.
Maybe they are the same person. Holy shit.
Well, the thing with Clark Gable's actual name is Clark Gable.
Oh, my God. Really?
Yeah. And then Cary Grant's actual name is Archibald Leach.
Which is probably the most British name I've ever heard.
I know, and people always forget that he is British.
Which is baffling to me.
Yeah.
Like, how do you forget?
Everyone's like, well, because he's just, I don't know, he always plays Americans who have British accents for no reason. You know? Like in every Alfred
Cheerio,
Hitchcock
good
movie, he
chap.
plays
How
an
did you like
American
the
guy.
Yankees game that I went to you with? I've been rooting for the Yankees my whole life. Good sport. Haven't you? What?
Oh yes, I sure do love baseball. That Babe Ruth is quite a character, don't you think?
I love it when they smack that ball with the wooden mallet. Oh, it's so grand. What the hell, dude? Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure North by Northwest, his character is American, but he's like, you know,
but he's British as can be.
the British as fuck, man. Well, I mean, that's part of his charm too, is that he's, it's like, oh, he's British, he's so like, I don't know, classy or whatever.
Yeah, but he's playing an
But he's playing an American. But there's also like that whole elocution thing that they did back then, where everyone kind of had to have a weird fake British accent.
They called it the Mid-Atlantic accent, I think.
Yeah, because it's like, someone was, the only people who would have that accent are people born halfway between Britain and America. But the weird thing is I think Cary Grant is the one person in the universe where the Mid-Atlantic accent is his normal accent. It's not some like put on that was taught to them by an elocution coach.
Listeners at home, if you don't know what the Mid-Atlantic accent sounds like, watch episode 4, A New Hope of Star Wars, because that's what Carrie Fisher goes in and out of the entire movie.
Well, it's just like, it's like how we imagine old movies.
Yes, that too.
Yes, darling, I'll always be with you. Like that way of talking, that's the Mid-Atlantic accent. It's kind of like how we imagine everyone in the 40s talked with like that radio announcer voice.
And like everyone like interrupted everyone else because of His Girl Friday, so we all just think everyone in the 40s was just like super snappy and super witty.
So everyone was super snappy, super witty, talked like a British person or a radio announcer. That's the 1940s in a nutshell.
There you go. Under the Wheels, 1940s movie. So have a British person. Oh, I really enjoyed watching that game of American football that we saw when the quarterback went back 5 yards and threw a deep one in the corner pocket to the corner pocket into the end of the zone and scored one of them touchdowns. I really rallied high, Terrio, man. Oh no.
Have you heard they're going to replace the leather helmets with plastic ones? Plastic helmets? That's
Absurd.
bollocks!
The Guy Ritchie version of an American movie where British people are playing football. Let's get Guy Ritchie's Any Given Sunday. There we go. Oh, man. Did you see Hail Caesar?
Yes, I did.
Everything we were talking about makes me think of Hail Caesar. So maybe we should go into our best. Maybe we should go into our best of the decade list.
You know what? That's the thing. Hail Caesar, everyone talks like a 1940s radio announcer.
I feel like the more
But I
that
mean, that's
watch
part
it,
of I think the Coen brothers,
That's part of the
stylization of everything.
I feel like it's, how we were talking about like movies that Academy Award, like the Academy Award winning movie, it takes place in the 1930s. It's about Hollywood. It has dramatic blah, 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 blah. Anti-communist sentiments. Like, I feel like Hail Caesar is a direct insult of all of the things that make an Academy Award winning movie.
Oh, totally.
And anyway, I'm sure we'll get to it because it's one of my favorite movies of the last 10 years. So the best of the decade. Should we just do it in our two different formats? Because it might just be easiest.
I think so.
Yeah. What year does your number 10 movie start in?
My number 10 movie is from the year 2014.
Okay, we'll start there. Oh, fuck. Sorry, I hit my headphones. Make sure they're plugged in. There we go. 2014. You want to start or do you want me to?
You can start, I guess. I mean, I think we'll both have the same number one.
What's your number one?
For the decade.
Oh, actually, wait. No, I don't want to know. Fuck, I don't want to know. Yeah, you're right. We will have. You know what? Yeah, you're right. By default, we will have the same number one. Why don't we start there? Why don't we just start with number one?
No, let's save this.
Okay, we'll save it. We'll save it.
So your methodology is you did your favorite movie from every year.
I did.
All right, and then mine is my 10 favorite movies from the collective 10 years.
Yes. So my favorite movie of 2014 was The Raid 2.
Yay, that's my number 10.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah.
Yes, dude, it's happening. I thought you said oh wow. Okay, all right. I have a handful of movies. If that's your number 10 movie in 2014, and 2014 was a surprisingly good year, I think we're in for quite a ride. Which I find funny because I feel like The Raid 2 is one of the best 10 movies of the is one of the best movies of the decade. Bar none. It's probably in the top 5 for me, actually. I don't think any other movie had been as influential, both because it takes everything cool from The Raid with the fight scenes, but also it adds this sort of like much more me style tone and tempo to the movie.
Yeah.
Everything's shot a lot better. The story is kind of goofy. Well, not goofy. The story is kind of cliched, but it's still a lot of fun, and the fight scenes are I'm going to say the fight scenes are revolutionary because everyone started copying The Raid 2 after it came out.
Oh, absolutely revolutionary. The Raid is, the film that set sail 1,000 ships. Everyone started imitating it after it came out. And The Raid 2 is the first Raid with everything good done better and none of the problems.
Except I remember I was disappointed by The Raid 2 when I first saw it in theaters.
Really?
Yeah.
I know some people who were disappointed by it or didn't think it was as good as the first one.
It's grown in my mind, and I watch it more than the first one. The first one's a lot harder to watch for me now because it's so low budget, and it's like the camera that it was shot on is just like so janky. Whereas The Raid 2, they had the budget, but The Raid is just such a tight story. Like there's almost no fat in it, and the fat is like plot that they have to move the story forward.
You see, I kind of feel differently. I think that, The Raid 2 is definitely longer, but I feel like The Raid just stops dead to get story shit out of the way. Whereas The Raid 2 keeps moving.
That's true, but that's because they have different tempos. Like if the tempos of the plot dump scenes had the same sort of rhythm as the action scenes and the same vitality, then that would be different. But in The Raid, they have those story breaks to make sure that the audience can breathe. Like when
The scene that always sticks out in my mind as the worst in the original Raid movie is when Rama's talking to his brother in the middle of the movie. Andy! That's my least favorite scene where they're just like, Dad wants you back. I have a kid. You're an uncle. And they're like, oh, okay, we're talking now, but everyone's breathing because we all need to like exhale a little bit before the next batshit and bonkers thing happens.
I know. It's also weird that they're brothers and they look nothing alike.
Not at all.
But yeah, the Raid 2, the second one.
Yes, the second
number
one.
10 movie
The better
of
one.
the last 10 years for me. It's amazing, and it's the gold standard for action movies as far as I'm concerned. Because the other thing too is it incorporates more different types of action than the first one. The first one, it's almost all hand to hand with the like one shootout.
Right,
like,
after the very beginning, yeah, it's almost all. The
Raid 2 has an amazing like car chase that has like tons of crazy technical tricks too, like when they pass the camera through cars while they're chasing each other. Like that's fucking insane. And I think I like the story a lot better in the second one. It's very, I kind of like the gangster crime drama, different family dynamics of like, there's the Don, and then his son is kind of a disappointment who wants more power and all that shit. Like, and then the final fight between Rama and the assassin is like one of the best fight scenes ever committed to film.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. Well, I think that whole ending sequence, like, because like the mini raid part of the Raid 2 is awesome. As soon as Rama like drives the car through all the way to the end is just amazing, because he's got like the hammer chick and the baseball bat guy. Oh, I love that fight scene so much. It's not super complicated. It's not super long, but like the way that they get the camera like shoved in their faces as they're fighting each other is just fucking awesome. Gareth Evans is a really sick fuck, and he's amazing.
I know. I want him to make another action movie, because I mean, Apostle was solid, but the best part of Apostle is when who's the main character?
Dan Stevens as Dan Stevens.
Yeah, the best part of that movie is when Dan Stevens like grabs the dude's spear and stabs him with it, and it does like the Raid camera move where it's locked on the spear.
I know it's sad, because I know like, and he's actually really good at building the moment, because if he wasn't good at that, then the first Raid and even the Raid 2 wouldn't work if he couldn't handle the pacing. But it's like, come on, just give us something like really badass, like the Raid 3 or something. Maybe not even the Raid, just like another property of like a lot of cool shit being fucked up,
or just another action movie of any kind.
Yeah.
In any language.
His next project is a TV series about gangsters. So here's hoping.
I feel about that. Hopefully it's like, Peaky Blinders with Kung Fu or something.
That's what I'm hoping, but they're British.
Hey,
so
man.
I'm just hoping it's Peaky Blinders with more fighting.
You got Robert Downey
Jason
Jr. doing like Wing Chun elbow blocks and fucking Sherlock Holmes, so you never know.
I thought you were going to say Doolittle. I was like, what? I mean, yeah, you never know. All right, what's your number 9 movie? What year?
Number 9 movie is from 2016.
All right, we'll jump to 2016. All right, what's your number 9 movie?
Green Room.
Ooh.
What's your top movie of 2016?
Hail Caesar.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Fuck all the other movies. Although I had a good list. All right, here's the list. All right, it's Hail Caesar, Hell or High Water, La La Land, and Shin Godzilla. No, you can take La La Land off. I like La La Land. But like Shin Godzilla is so fucking awesome. But I never need to watch it again. Because the parts that so you know how the Raid is just one singular idea?
Yeah.
Shin Godzilla is this creature comes out of the sea, and it's like Godzilla on 4 legs, and then halfway through the movie it evolves and it's Godzilla on 2 legs, and it's destroying everyone, and so the humans have to find a way to defeat it, and that's the story. And it's very simple, but it also means that they have to like it's cool because it's how would the world react to a threat like this, a terrorist threat, which is like giant fucking,
Nuclear lizard.
nuclear monster, which is better than the other two. It's still the best Godzilla movie to come out in the last 5 years. But it's also kind of okay, now that I've seen it, I don't need to see it again. I don't need to see all the people running around scrambling, not knowing what to do. It just kind of it makes me uninterested in watching it, even though the scenes where Godzilla is running around blowing everything up are awesome.
So, what makes Hail Caesar your best movie of 2016?
Well, because I really love Hail Caesar. It's partially because I think it's just a very easy watch. I can just put it on and forget about everything. I can put it on while I work. I can put it on and just pay attention to it. I like the way it makes fun of Hollywood, but also is kind of an homage to it.
Yeah.
I like the characterization of a lot of the characters, especially how Alden Ehrenreich's character basically becomes the hero in the second half of the movie, because he's he's a total nitwit. He just can't. He's good at what he does, which is do cowboy things and do action scenes and stuff like that.
Would that it were so simple.
Would that it were. Would that it were.
Would that it were. Would that it were.
He's really good in it. That scene is funny. All of the little vignette scenes of it, and all the musical numbers I find really funny. But it's just every time I think about it, I'm just I can just put it on. And I'll get something new out of it. I always find the scene where he's talking with the religious figures really entertaining. He's do we have a good representation of all religious figures? And it's what did you think of this? What did you think of the script? It was all right. I mean, religious-wise, religion-wise. Well, we do not believe in we do not believe in the Nazarene. All of that shit. I always think about it, and I always think is funny. The stuff with George Clooney where they're having this sophisticated conversation about the dialectic, and he's that reminds me of that one time and he's just the biggest idiot ever.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that stuff is funny to me.
George Clooney is he's kind of the last old school movie star. And that he has that vibe about him, but he also is he's kind of like a Humphrey Bogart, where he can only really play one character, but he plays that character really, really well. And that character is the boss. He's always the man in charge type of guy. Mm-hmm. And it's funny how he plays the dumbass version of that in Hail Caesar.
In all the Coen brother movies, he's always he's always kind of buffoonish. Which is great. He does that really well.
Well, yeah, but he's the buffoonish version of the character that he plays in every movie.
Yeah. Well, and also Clancy Brown makes an appearance in there. I was Clancy Brown's alive. And he's Appolitus, come here. And it's he gets to share scenes with George Clooney, and he's, I don't know, just and maybe it's because I'm a stooge for the same kind of Oscar bait movies that all Oscar bait people are for, but I love all of the joking around with the Hollywood stuff, even though I know that their pretend Hollywood studio is a studio that simultaneously exists in 1920, 1940, and 1960, all at the same time. None of the movies that they have greenlit and are producing take place in one specific year. This isn't what they were doing in the movies at the time. In the movies. So that's why I like Hail Caesar. In the pictures. That's right. Oh, I make pictures,
Yeah, so Green Room is the first of two 2016 movies on my top 10 list. In the same way that I think The Raid 2 is kind of the gold standard for action movies, Green Room is the gold standard for thrillers. It's so fucking intense, and it's one of those movies where you watch it and you're almost exhausted afterwards, where you're holy fuck, you feel like you've been put through the ringer, the same way those characters are. And there's very few movies that can do it the way that Green Room does, where it's the way Jeremy Saulnier controls the information that's given to the audience is so masterful that you legitimately have no fucking clue what's about to happen, and you're always just terrified, oh fuck, what about? Mm-hmm. And every time you think oh, okay, I think I can see where this is going, it just does a complete 180, and is like, nope, you were wrong.
Yeah.
And
Fucking dogs.
the fucking dogs, man.
Fucking dogs.
Or like when the one guy like turns against the other neo-Nazis, he's like, I'm gonna help you guys get out of here, and then just immediately gets killed. And just like, oh fuck, retreat. Like, that's brilliant. The whole movie is brilliant, and it's unfortunately, I think, set my expectations a little too high for Jeremy Saulnier because I've been disappointed by some of his more recent efforts.
Yeah.
But yeah, Green Room is just an absolute masterpiece. It's so intense. It's so just viscerally gripping, and it's I think what every thriller, every real thriller should aspire to be.
Well, it builds perfectly too. Mm-hmm. Like, the mood is set really. That's the thing. It's amazing how he's able to set the mood as soon as the movie starts.
Oh yeah.
Like, as soon as the movie started, I was already on edge, and I didn't have to worry about being on edge for another 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Dude, the trailer for that movie like blew my mind too, because I went to see The Witch or something, and
I guess I know what the other movie on your 2016 list is.
It's not The Witch, oddly enough.
Oh,
The
it
Witch
didn't come.
It just missed.
Oh wow. Okay. All right.
I went to see like The Witch or something, and this trailer comes on where it's like Anton Yelchin talking about, it's like, the feeling of live music. Like, there's nothing like it, man. Like, you gotta be it. And it's like, oh, this is some like stupid indie like, band movie. And then it immediately goes to like some dude like murdering a girl. They're like, oh shit, what do we do? And then they're like, kill the band. The band is witnesses. And Patrick Stewart's like this evil Nazi. And you're like, what the fuck is going on? So the trailer definitely caught my attention, yeah. But when I actually saw the movie, I'm like, holy fuck, this is so much better than I ever could have imagined.
Yeah, it didn't disappoint. I need to rewatch it because I watched like a DVD copy. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I had to watch like a DVD copy of the movie on my PlayStation while I was like, half dead from work. So, which is kind of the same thing for The Witch. So I definitely want to give it another go because like, I love the fact that he can't figure out if he was on if he's on a desert island and he could only have one band or one album to listen to, one song, and he can't figure it out through the entire movie. And I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be a recurring element of it.
And I love the ending of that too, where he's like, I think I know what my desert island record is, and then the chick's just like, who the fuck cares?
I'm not a huge fan of Imogen Poots, but I'll look past that. It's awesome. Green Room's awesome, especially when he like starts mauling people with a fucking machete with his like half on hand.
I know,
throughout most
dude.
of the movie.
God! When he puts his hand through the door, it's like one of the craziest moments in film history. It's so
gnarly.
It's so fucking gnarly.
Oh, it's so good.
Because like, awesome. It's one of those movies that was interesting all the way up until that point, and then when that happened, you're like, oh, it's on. It is on. Yeah. Like, the real movie has begun now. So yeah, Green Room number 9.
Nice. What year was your number 8 movie?
2018.
2018. Okay, I'm gonna give you one movie, but then if I really decide that there's nothing I can find, no. All right. 2018, it was basically torn between Mission Impossible Fallout and You Were Never Really Here.
Oh wow.
What was your number? What was your 2018?
Number 8 on my list is 2018's Annihilation.
Nice.
You want to go first?
You
gotta pick one of those two. You can't go both.
I know. Since I tend to lean more towards like popular fare between the two of us, I'm gonna go with Mission Impossible Fallout.
Okay.
Just because, God, it's so tough. Do I really have to pick one?
Yes. I am arbitrarily making the rules right now.
You know what, then? Give me some time to think about which... wait. Fuck. Oh, God. Because they're both so... Well,
I'll talk about Annihilation then.
Yeah, talk about Annihilation.
All right. So Annihilation, it's amazing. I didn't hear much about it going in. I just knew that like it was not doing well at the box office.
Yeah, it's
but I really wanted to see it because I liked Ex Machina quite a bit, and this also looked very interesting. And the movie fucking blew my mind, man. Like I don't know, I had like chills running through my entire body for the last 30 minutes of it. Like it's so visceral. Again, it's a very viscerally powerful movie. It's one of those movies that just it captured my attention in a way that's hard to describe. And just the audiovisual spectacle of everything was so immense that it's kind of hard to compare it to a lot of other stuff you see now.
It's also weird because it's just so unique.
It is,
Like,
yeah.
It takes a lot of familiar tropes, but it twists everything to feel unique.
Well, twists, I think, being the operative word, because it's
It twists like an intestine on your spine.
Exactly. Well, it's got. I mean, I love body horror movies, but it takes like every body horror trope and really runs with it and does something really unique and special. The bear, I was kind of disappointed. Like, the bear is so fucking terrifying in that movie, but I was kind of disappointed to see that because I had an idea for something like that maybe a year or two before I saw the movie. And I'm like, shit, they did it already. They beat me to it. But I don't know, it's so good. It's so, because it's like, I mean, the whole movie is about how our sense of the world and how our sense of what's real and what's normal can essentially get turned inside out in every possible way, Like, not only are these people in their environment being physically twisted around and turned inside out, and that produces there's a lot of great production design that goes into that.
Yeah.
But it's also like their relationships to each other and their sense of identity about themselves gets like warped and turned inside out as well. And then like the last half hour of that movie is some of those most amazing filmmaking ever. Like there's no talking. It's all just like sounds.
Okay.
Well, there's almost no talking. It's
I
all
know what
just
you're talking-
sounds
yeah.
and images, and kind of like the ending of The Lighthouse, but where The Lighthouse ending was maybe 5 minutes long or whatever. That one moment where you open
Yeah.
the lantern.
Yeah.
This was like a half hour of that, which again is such an achievement, and that's why it's on the list.
Annihilation is amazing. I realized that when I was making my top 10 list, I had up to 2017, and I didn't look at 2018 or 2019. So I skipped over Annihilation, but that was one of those things that I was so glad I got to see it in theaters, even if that last half hour basically blew out my eardrums.
Oh yeah, but you have to have it with those big speakers like rattling your chair in the theater.
The whole movie's just it's a throwback to like a great science fiction movie that you had to see it in theaters, because the moments where they're inside, when they infiltrate into past the giant rainbow wall and they start going inside, and you get this impending dread that you just can't get at home. You have to be in a theater, and like the silent moments when they're just reflecting on each other. It's such a large scale movie, and it's really good, if a little disgusting, but
Well, but it's a body horror movie.
well
Of course, it's
earned,
going to be
yeah.
disgusting.
Oh yeah. It's a very good hard sci-fi movie, which you don't.
Definitely.
I feel like it's hard to find good hard sci-fi.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a hard sci-fi movie because it involves like aliens and shit, but it's a great sci-fi movie, and it's a great like large scale, not just visually, but sonically, thematically, narratively,
Intellectually,
an epic movie.
Yeah, and a lot has been said about the ambiguous ending. Although I almost half expected you to chime in and be like, I don't think the ending's ambiguous, but I feel like unlike certain other movies, I feel like this one definitely earns its ambiguous ending.
Well, so the thing with ambiguous endings is
That you hate them?
no, I think they're great.
Me too.
Not always, but usually they're pretty great.
Good
the thing with
ambiguous endings.
The thing with ambiguous endings, it's usually a signal to the viewer that the resolution for the story is not in a chronological event. That if you're looking to resolve everything just in terms of these are the events that happened, you're approaching the movie the wrong way, and you have to You have to approach you have to take on a different point of view. And I think that's the functional purpose of ambiguous endings. It's signaling to the viewer, take a different point of view with the movie than just a story view. You know, think about other things. Try to find meaning elsewhere. Because again, the movie is about how, you know, the world. I've heard the argument that it's, you know, it's about grief or whatever, but I think it's just any situation in which the world as we know it can suddenly become alien to us, which happens, you know. And on any time that you go through really extreme emotional stress, you know, I think it's a universal experience where the world just stops making sense. And I think that's kind of what the movie's about. You know, it's about these people who who already have been through a lot, so their perspective is a little warped, but now they go through something even more traumatizing to where everything that they took for granted about their existence is now unknown to them, and they're afraid of it.
This is why I come to you. You're able to like take the unambiguous and give good meaning to it. I'll make a decision right now. I'm going to say that You Were Never Really Here was the movie of 2018.
I was hoping you would say Mission Impossible Fallout because I want to hear what you have to say about Mission Impossible. But okay, You Were Never Really Here. Go.
I can tell you about Mission Impossible Fallout too, but I think like I don't. It's funny because they both set with me in completely different ways. Yeah. But I think about Mission Impossible Fallout from like a technical and like a fun point of view. You Were Never Really Here is just a movie that had an idea, had a system, and just executed it perfectly. I think I like the fact that a lot of the action in the movie was downplayed, which made it feel more visceral. Like you see all of the action through either like security cameras or in brief glimpses here and there. Yeah. It had a very clear tone, kind of like how Green Room had a very clear tone that was established early. This movie literally starts with Joaquin Phoenix with a bag over his head. Yeah. And I'm like, Jesus Christ! I can't believe he lived after that. But I like the character that he creates. He feels like it feels like a spin on all of those action heroes who go out and get vengeance, or all those action heroes who are tasked with a mission. But like a realistic version. Like if you saw a guy like that in real life, like living next door to you, he would be disgusting. He would be fat. You would never want anything to really do with him. Yeah. But it just proves that like even disgusting people have souls. And I like the way that it was a very intimate story, but it had a grand scale as far as what was happening, because it was like a senator or whatever who was running this. It was basically Jeffrey Epstein.
Senator Jeffrey Epstein.
State Senator Jeffrey Epstein, but like they were able to keep it like really grounded, really personal, but also still that you get to feel that world around it. Yeah. Tone was good, acting was good, direction was fantastic. Yeah. The movie that Joaquin Phoenix, one of the two movies Joaquin Phoenix should have won the Academy Award for, but didn't.
I mean, I love me some Joaquin Phoenix. I think, you know, You Were Never Really Here is probably the best directed and most artistically consistent movie that I like, but I'm not crazy about. Because it's, for like an action thriller, I wanted more action and thrills. Even though, like, from an artistic perspective, it makes sense that there isn't much of that. Because, you know, I think the way I saw it is the whole movie is about, Joaquin Phoenix's character clearly has very strong PTSD. He had a very traumatic childhood, which led into a very traumatic adulthood where he goes around like hunting pedophiles and stuff. Yeah. And, you know, he has to save this girl from her own traumatic childhood and metaphorically save himself, a very common trope. But, you know, it's a great directorial idea that his PTSD is built into how the movie's shot and edited, where, you know, his mind is screening out traumatic events. It's screening out violence so that he doesn't have to confront it. And as a result of that, all the violence in the movie is like, you know, grainy security camera footage. It's from around a corner. It's off screen. It's through broken glass. It's all hidden, so you can't see it. But it's there. You can't see it. You can't tell what's going on. Yeah. You don't have to stare at it directly. And I think that's That's such a brilliant idea. I just don't think it makes for a great thriller or a great action movie.
We don't talk about it very often, but like one of the things I like is seeing something in a unique way. And this movie, the way that they did it, because I think we might have had a talk about this, or at least I've talked about it with someone before. But the director of it like purposefully made sure that you didn't see the action, because then in your mind, all of like sometimes seeing all of the trauma of an event is like the aftermath of it is more powerful than if they showed it. Like in The Shining, they flash and you see all the dead bodies and the blood everywhere of the twins.
Yeah.
It's like that's almost more, because your mind can go in any direction. That's a lot more graphic than anything that a movie could do, unless with the exception of certain directors.
Yeah.
And the whole movie just left an impression on me that still stuck with me, which is why it's my favorite of 2018, because it still stuck with me, even though I love me some Mission Impossible Fallout with Henry Cavill, reloading his arms just to like get totally owned by an Asian guy.
Oh yeah, which is weird because he's massive and the guy he's fighting is like 5'5" and
It's basically a
110
movie
pounds.
Basically a movie of Henry Cavill showing that even if you're a big guy, you're still gonna get your ass kicked by all the smaller, faster guys. Fuck, I love Fallout so much.
The other thing that comes to mind about You Were Never Really Here is there's a lot of bitching and moaning about how there's no female representation behind the camera. And it's like, Lynn Ramsey, who wrote and directed You Were Never Really Here, is
based off of a book.
It's based off of a book, but she wrote the script.
Yeah, she did.
Sure.
She did. Yeah.
So she's she's probably the best female director in the world and gets no love from anyone.
Yeah, well...
Like between this and We Need to Talk About Kevin, like that is...
I was going to say,
that's like high-level shit. Yeah, We Need to Talk About Kevin is an amazing movie. And again, the strength of her directing ability and her style is what carries it. So yeah, it's just strange to me why she gets no attention. When, everyone wants, like, why are there no women directors nominated for whatever? It's like, well, you ignore Lynn Ramsey, so... don't expect much then,
Yeah, but everyone ignored this movie. Like, that was the thing. It's like...
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's the best... Like, even though I'm not in love with it, it's the best directed movie that I'm not in love with.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's the only Lynn Ramsey movie I've seen, but I was blown away by it because it's a lot of good, strong choices, a lot of creative choices. So
yeah, Lynn Ramsey is an amazing filmmaker, and it's a shame she doesn't get more attention.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this movie was, it was done for like, a piece of gum and a string budget-wise. So like, she's doing that. Like, I'm sure that also played into why she couldn't have cool action scenes.
I don't know, maybe.
But that's what makes her a good
director. I like
director.
to think it was a stylistic choice.
I like to think it was form following function.
Exactly.
Because you could have tried to do something really shitty, and she instead chose to represent it in a creative way. Mm-hmm. So it lends more credence to her as a director.
Yeah. And it's interesting because the only really explicit scene of violence is, the main character's suicide fantasy.
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So like the only violence that he's willing to sort of accept in his own mind is directed towards himself, which is interesting. Again, like it's a really good like kind of subjective movie. It's a really good movie that gives you the world very specifically through the eyes of a single person, and not just a person, but a very damaged person.
Well, and just quickly, and then we can move on. But it also is just like a reminder of why Joker is so disappointing to me.
Yeah.
Like we've been here, we've done that with Joaquin Phoenix in 2 different movies. Yep. Just because you smashed it into one doesn't necessarily mean it's better if he already executed it perfectly.
All right, number 7 is for me 2017's Good Time.
All right, you want to talk about 2017's Good Time?
Sure. It's again amazing movie. All the movies we're talking about are amazing.
That's true.
This is like
I'm surprised it's so low, actually.
You should just wait. You'll see what's above it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just like it's everything that everyone says Uncut Gems is, but better.
We are those guys.
Yeah, well,
we
it's
will
just-
find the movie that everyone thinks is the best and find the one before it that was better than that one.
Yeah, I
but
know.
But you had already known that.
I already know that. I was an evangelist for Good Time since I saw it in theaters. But yeah, I mean, Bobby Pattinson, he's great as always. You know, completely vanishes into the character that he plays of this, you know, low-life criminal. I mean, the movie is ultra frantic in terms of its story, where it's just, you know, it's kind of like The First Pusher, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. You know, it's one guy just continually trying to bluff his way out of a problem, only to bluff his way into a bigger problem. And it has the intense camera work, the amazing score from Daniel Lopatin to match. And it has all these great performances by like unknown kind of non-entity actors. Like, you know, the guy Ray who has the beat up face and tells like the really weird story that goes nowhere.
He's the guy who falls over at the end. He's like climbing up the building at the end. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out why he wasn't in Uncut Gems. Turns out the reason he's not in Uncut Gems is because he isn't an actor. He's just some guy from New York that the Safdie brothers know, who's a drug addict. And the reason he's not in Uncut Gems is because he's back in jail.
Dude, if you only knew. That whole movie is nuts. Like like running through the mall with real people, even though they got permits and everything. They're like, just keep the mall open, and we'll just have Robert Pattinson running through the mall, and no one's gonna notice it's him.
They got permits and then showed up without telling anybody, and shot the scene.
That's so awesome.
Like, they shot the scene as if they didn't have permits, but they got permits.
Yeah, they're like, we covered our backs, but they're
Well, and it's also like, it's very. I thought the ending was like. I think the movie's very touching as well, in a way that a lot of similar movies maybe just be really cynical or not emotional in any way. Like, I always get kind of choked up at the end where, you know, Connie he goes to jail. He, you know, gives himself up so his brother can go and have a good life, and, you know, his brother, who's mentally handicapped, goes into that room where, you know, it's like a classroom with a bunch of other mentally handicapped adults, and there's a teacher trying to get them to like socialize and work together on stuff, and it's playing that song from Iggy Pop, and it's just like, oh, this movie's so good.
You and I definitely had different reactions to it. I still think about it, but I don't have the sort of absolute love for it that you do.
Yeah, I love that
but
movie so much.
I will say this. I know that you like the camera work.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you like the camera work in it. I can't stand it, and I can
It's
see
a
how
huge
that would.
turnoff for a lot of people. I know Austin hates it too.
It's too suffocating to me, which is the point. It's the point of it.
Exactly.
I understand.
Well, it's like the obscuring the violence in You Were Never Really Here. Like, I know that's the point. I just don't like it.
Different strokes for different folks.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, you know, a good time. It's also that kind of timeless story of a bad guy who has to sort of let go of his own ego in order to save someone else who's not as far down the path that they are. You know, just like You Were Never Really Here, just like Taxi Driver, just like all these other movies.
Yeah.
And that narrative to me is never not interesting, even if it is kind of cliched at this point.
I will say, after I read your review of it on
underthewheels.blogspot.com/blog, where you can find a review for Good Time as well as other movie reviews and articles.
Your review for Good Time at that website actually made me want to go back and rewatch the movie, because I was like, oh man,
good.
you literally sell tickets for this movie. Like, you could sell tickets for this movie.
I mean, that's what I was trying to do. Whenever I write a really glowing review of something, it's because I think it's really great, and I really want other people to check it out. I'm not one of those guys who only likes obscure shit because I want to seem cool or whatever. Like, I want Good Time to be a big box office hit that everyone's seen, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think it deserves that. I want Green Room to be a big box office smash that everyone's seen and everyone's talking about.
You're single-handedly trying to change filmmaking viewing culture. It's a war of one, Gabe. War of one.
Would that it were so simple.
That whole scene is perfect. I don't care what anyone says. You will give a mirthless chuckle.
All right, what's your 2017 top movie?
My 2017 top movie, if people have been following the blog, they would know it's John Wick Chapter 2.
I mean, that's my second favorite movie from 2017.
I know, it's just so good. I mean, the thing is, like, with hindsight, certain things come to light, right? So, like, I still love John Wick Chapter 2, but at this point, I've seen Lost City of Z twice. I own a copy of Dunkirk. Those movies are almost neck and neck with John Wick 2 as far as best picture, especially Lost City of Z, maybe because I just really like Charlie Hunnam. But also the movie itself is just a really great epic, also starring Robert Pattinson. But with John Wick 2, I just wanted to have some sort of like consistency, and also because I just really fucking like John Wick 2.
Yeah.
Like I think we talked about this a little bit in our top 10. I still think it's a little bit too heavy loaded in the back. And there's not enough that really happens in the middle that is action oriented. Yeah. But it strikes that perfect balance of too much perfect amount of world building, perfect amount of keeping it personal. They have a really good villain in it. And aside from that gunfight when he's trying to get out of the catacombs, which on paper should have been awesome.
I actually really like that gunfight. I didn't realize I was in the minority on that.
I don't know if you're in the minority on it all the way, but it definitely just, I wish it were lit a bit more like the scene at the nightclub in John Wick Chapter 2, which I think, or in John Wick, which I think is what they were going for, but didn't quite get. Because also like the way that the action proceeds is just so linearly that there's not much to it. Whereas with a lot of the other fight scenes, there's a lot more variety in, the dynamics of it, like there's more creativity, and there's more using the location for a lot more fun in a lot of the other fight scenes. Now, with that said, it's still like a masterclass in gun-inspired fight scenes, and it still holds up really well. It's still gorgeously shot, really well edited. Keanu Reeves is, he's back, man. That was his He's Back movie. So John Wick Chapter 2.
So because your list is structured differently than mine, it has both John Wick 2 and The Raid 2.
Right.
Which one is better?
Which one is better out of those two? For me personally, The Raid 2 is better.
I would agree with you. I mean, for me, they're neck and neck, but I like The Raid 2 just a little bit more.
Like, nothing to slant on John Wick 2 on it too much, but like The Raid 2 is just a much... I don't know. It's got a lot more things that I like. Like, I like that it takes an interlude to show all three of these mini bosses and bosses that Rama has to fight. I like the villain in The Raid 2, even if, it could be construed as like maybe they're being a little racist in it. I like that this guy is so like obsessed with, rising the gangster corporate ladder, and he's aggressively expanding his business, and so I love all of the internal politics of that, which are
I also like how business is the only word they say in English.
Is it really?
Yeah, because they'll be like blah, 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 in Indonesian and then say business like the one word that translates through. I also like I like a lot of the characters I like him in both, but The Raid 2 just has it's able to sort of like ascend that epic scope better to me than John Wick Chapter 2 did. Okay.
All right, number 6 for you.
Number 6, we're going back to 2014. So if you want to grab a movie from like 2013 or 2010, feel free to do so.
Oh God, you had to do 20. Let's see. Really, you don't have anything from 2010?
Nope.
Okay, I'll pull something from 2010 then.
All right, so number 6 is 2014's The Clouds of Sils Maria.
Wow.
Which is, it's a French movie, but it's in English, starring a good deal of American actors.
Yeah. No, Juliette Binoche is actually French.
Well, yeah, but
I know
Kristen
what you're talking
Stewart
about.
and all the other people are American.
You like Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson, just not in the same movie.
I know. But I found it endlessly fascinating when I first saw it. Like, I got it on like the old DVD Netflix that you would get in the mail. And I watched it like 2 or 3 times when it came in the mail. because I thought it was so captivating, because it's like, it's about an actress who's getting older, and a playwright who wrote the play that launched her career dies. So then she goes to do a revival of the play, and the play is about like the relationship between an aging actress and an aging professional and a young up-and-coming professional. And she's going from playing the younger role to the older role. And meanwhile, her career is kind of fading, and then there's another young rising star who's seems, super scandal prone, who seems to be hogging the spotlight from her. And it's one of these movies where it's like every aspect of this woman's life is constantly being doubled and tripled and quadrupled and replayed in different arenas and in different ways as she tries to make sense of her own place in the world during this time of transition in her life. And just, it is kind of surreal, and all of how layered it is just, there's so much to dig into, and it is a lot of fun to dig into. The performances are all amazing. I mean, I think this is the one that like Kristen Stewart won a French Oscar for, and she does a really good job as kind of the woman's assistant who, is kind of like your typical assistant, just sort of doing whatever she asks, but a lot of the time is also there to keep her in check, because Juliette Binoche's character does not have a very realistic sense of the world, because she's this big movie star.
Right.
And, the way they kind of play off each other is really fun to watch. But yeah, it's a really strange movie, and I totally get that it's not for everybody, but I love it.
Interesting. I think I made it through 20 minutes of it, so I know kind of the basic premise, but I that's why I was blown away when it was on your list, because I had been curious to watch it, but now that just kind of gives the last check mark I need to like actually sit down and watch it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really good. It's like reading a really good novel in a way. It's a very literary kind of story that it's telling. Yeah, and a lot of the narrative devices it uses are more common to literature than they are to film.
Right. That's why I thought it was kind of interesting, and I love the whole idea of like, now the aging actress has to play the role that she was, the opposite of when she first started. She's now transitioned from being the young whippersnapper to the old professional who's fading into glory. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed like a really interesting premise, but also seemed like a really slow movie.
I didn't think it was that slow. I thought it kept a pretty tidy pace.
Yeah, it's very dialogue heavy.
Yes, that is very true.
And so that kind of propels it forward.
At least it's English dialogue. It's not subtitled.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be fine if it was subtitled. I don't have a problem with that. But I would probably be like, clearly I don't, because I like the raid movies that have a ton of dialogue.
For some reason. Action movie, like an action movie with a ton of dialogue.
I'm going to go 2010. And my favorite movie of 2010 was actually The Social Network.
Ooh. Yeah. You were a big proponent of The Social Network a long time before anyone was really... Like, I think there's kind of some revisionist history with that movie, where it's like when it came out, everyone thought it was good. And now everyone's like, oh, Social Network is a masterpiece. Meanwhile, you were like, Social Network is a masterpiece way before anyone else I'd ever heard say that.
I will say that that was the same year that True Grit came out. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so I will say that True Grit if I had the eyes that I have now back then, I probably would have gone True Grit. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit too much like, oh, True Grit isn't gritty enough for me at the time, but I fucking love True Grit now. I think it's almost the perfect movie. But The Social Network is actually a perfect movie for me. It was a perfect movie the second time I saw it because everything clicked perfectly. Great script by Aaron Sorkin, which was naturally recognized. Fantastic direction by David Fincher, which was not recognized. It should have won the Academy Award for Best Picture that year, or David Fincher should have won for Best Director, and then Milquetoast, The King's Speech, could have won Best Picture. That's how it should have gone. But unfortunately, the Academy of voters are conservative, I guess, old and lazy. But The Social Network is the movie that pushed everyone into feeling comfortable that they could shoot digital. Like, first and foremost, after Slumdog Millionaire, The Social Network is, if not the second most, it is the most important movie in moving movies towards digital. It also legitimized...
More important than Zodiac?
Was Zodiac shot digitally?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
It was the first movie shot on a red camera.
Wow.
I think.
The Social Network is the movie that gave people confidence that they could continue, that they really could do it. Because you see, like, you don't really see people shooting on red until after Social Network. Then all of a sudden you have The Hobbits being shot on a red camera. That's the movie that I think for a lot of people it legitimized it. It might have been Zodiac, but the Social Network made people comfortable with sort of like a washed out kind of look that it became kind of pervasive for a little while and people still think is a good look. It's only good in certain contexts.
Like a David Fincher movie.
Like a David Fincher movie. I mean, that is his style.
Yeah.
It also made Jesse Eisenberg a legitimate actor in the populace's eyes. I think he was kind of seen as like the Kmart version of Michael Cera for a little while. Social Network was the movie that proved he could actually act. Social Network was the movie that regrettably put Andrew Garfield on the map for a time. Now it's good, but it's the movie that basically got him Spider-Man, better or worse. It's the movie that put Justin Timberlake on as a legitimate actor. The Social Network, I will go this far as to say that the Social Network made it so that Trent Reznor could have another career as a film composer. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Yeah. So that elevated them. And it's a movie about a really boring topic told really entertainingly. And
That's true.
And it jumps back and forth between really it jumps back and forth in time, which is always fun. It also has some great like little cameos, like John Getz is in there. I'm like, yeah, John Getz, good on you, man. It also captured the time period really well that they were trying to go for. Like, I totally remember, like, I remember Silicon Valley back in 2004 to 2007. Yes, it demonized some characters unnecessarily. It made angels out of other characters who clearly weren't. Eduardo Saverin comes out looking really good. Oh, it also, like, the duplicated digital head technology that they pioneered in Benjamin Button, they, like, perfected here for Mr.
Armie
I'm
Hammer,
6 foot, 6'2", 200 pounds, and there's two of me, so it's just all around, like, everything seemed to work perfectly in that movie for me personally. So that's why it goes over Inception, it goes over True Grit, and it's still one of the most important movies of the 2010s.
It's definitely a landmark. Like, it set the tone for the decade, I think, in a way
really
that people
did.
didn't realize until the decade was over.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But yeah, that's a good pick.
You're if you want to say anything about The Social Network, you can.
I haven't seen it since 2010, so it's hard to say.
I watch it pretty often. Like, I watch it like once a year at least.
It's funny because, like, I like David Fincher's movies a lot, but Social Network didn't blow me away when I saw it. Keep in mind I was like 15.
That is actually really funny.
I mean, like, Zodiac is still my favorite movie of his, but that's a subject for another time. All right. So number 5 on my list, going back to 2016, is La La Land.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. Which I know people, like, just shit on La La Land unrepentantly. Pretty much ever since its Oscar campaign through to this day, no one really seems to care about it or talk about it anymore. People still talk about Moonlight. No one talks about La La Land, which is telling. But I fucking love that movie. I think it was part of it. It was the right movie at the right time.
For you?
Like, I think it was my last year of college. I was not doing great. And it was like the movie I needed to see. And, it's like that. The whole movie's good throughout. I mean, a lot of musical theater dorks don't like it because it doesn't fit their idea of what musical theater should be or what a musical film should be, which is like, whatever. Whoever you can't take musical theater people seriously. I'm sorry, but you can't.
There goes our biggest demographic. I will say this talking about musical theater people. I remember when the movie 9 came out, and all of them went wild. So musical theater people either absolutely love the musical adaptations of the movies, or they absolutely hate them.
I have nothing against musical theater people. I'm just being mean because I don't like musicals. But I like the movie as a whole. I don't think there's any part in there that stands out to me as being weak, even though people love to poke holes in it. But
Really?
I think, oh yeah, I like the whole thing. Probably my least favorite.
No.
part
I
is
meant the weakness thing. I was like, really? There are people who think that the movie is weak structurally.
Oh yeah,
That's
tons of
the
people.
topic for the day.
I've gotten into arguments over it. Yeah, there's definitely people out there who think that.
Oh my god! Next time you do, give me a call. I'd love to hear them and help you out, man. I really do like La La Land a lot.
Yeah, I mean, my least favorite part of the movie is actually the opening dance number because it looks so bland.
Oh, I love that because it's just so goofy when the guy stops, turns around, opens the door, and there's these guys smiling, and I'm like, yeah.
There's a guy drumming inside of a U-Haul.
Yeah, it's like, what the hell? But see, I love all that, like that surreal stuff in musicals. I love. I can understand that people don't like that.
Yeah. And then it's also, again, it's like one of those movies that just gets to me emotionally every single time I see it. Or it's like I start crying like a bitch during Emma Stone's big song towards the end.
Oh, so good.
And then the big finale, like that is just soul crushing, but in like a very beautiful way.
Yeah. It actually is my perfect kind of ending. I love bittersweet endings.
Yeah. I mean, it's so just exquisite and sad at the same time, and that mix is so hard to pull off well, and I think La La Land does it perfectly.
Just quickly, did you see The Adjustment Bureau?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh my god. Okay, so The Adjustment Bureau should have had a La La Land type ending where, except the inverse, where he gives up his passion, she gives up her passion, and they just live happily as a couple. Mm-hmm. But because I guess some suit got in the way, the ending actually is he gives up his passion, she gives up her passion, and they're like, oh, we'll just give you everything you guys want. And I'm like, I've always hated that ending. I've always hated that movie. And I'm so glad that La La Land took it in a different but much more grounded direction.
Yeah.
Proceed.
Yeah. But yeah, La La Land I think La La Land is a masterpiece, and I will fight anyone who says otherwise.
A quick anecdote about La La Land. I was editing this feature film for a guy, and they didn't have the only one I've done, and they didn't shoot a lot of footage. They shot the whole movie in 5 days, so they didn't shoot a lot of footage. So there were a lot of scenes in the movie that all take place in one long shot. Mm-hmm. So I have to watch one take of these guys who don't really do a great job in this one shot of this movie, and then I went and watched La La Land, where there are a lot of scenes that take place in one take and one shot but they're fantastic performers. But that's what I unfortunately sometimes think about when I watch La La Land, which is kind of like, I kind of wish I hadn't watched La La Land right in the midst of editing that feature because of that. But with that said, the cinematography, well-earned Academy Award winning cinematography.
Yes. Oh, yes. Although, it's weird that La La Land and Moonlight got put into this weird competition back in 2016, because they're both great movies. I don't understand why you guys got to fight, but I've said this before. I thought the story for Moonlight was really boring, but I thought all the technical aspects were really impressive, and the cinematography being one of them. So it's one of those things where if La La Land had lost the cinematography prize to Moonlight, I would not have complained.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I watched Moonlight on DVD, and none of the cinematography looks as good when you're watching it in lower resolution.
I saw Moonlight in the theater, and it was weird because everyone in the theater was crying when it was over, except for me. And except for me and my brother. And I turned to my brother and I was like, did I miss something? These people were so moved by this movie, and I'm just like, oh, it's pretty good.
I don't want to sound racist here, but what was the demographic of the theater?
I mean, the demographic of where I'm from. It's not very diverse, but I think what few black people are in my community, I think they showed up.
Okay, right. Well, I've always been curious because I know one of the main reasons it's so tough is because of homosexuality in the black community, and how it's perceived.
Which is something that I don't really know enough about to have that kind of a connection that kind of a reaction. Yeah. So it makes sense that they would find it a lot more meaningful than I would in that sense.
Well, and then the other thing was that I didn't cry at the end, but I did find the ending very touching.
I thought the ending was weird because like the main guy, Sharon or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
He confronts Kevin and he's like, look, like my life is a fucking disaster. Like I'm alone, I'm miserable, I'm in and out of jail, and it's all because you stabbed me in the back. Mm-hmm. And then Kevin's just like, hey, like he just shrugs and smiles like Fonzie, and then they're fine. Everything's fine after that. I'm like, how is that the resolution?
I know. So it's funny. I didn't get that same feeling. I had this feeling of like one guy's life was ruined because of that moment. The other guy's life was also ruined because of that moment. Neither of them have ever been able to recover from that moment. They finally found common ground and have accepted that the only way for them to be happy in the shitty lives that they have is to try to be together. That's what I got out of it. Like the very long, drawn out, really awkward conversations where you could tell it was a play originally. Mm-hmm. That's what I got out of those scenes. I will say that those are probably the least interesting of the story, because like the very beginning of the movie is just like really heartbreaking with, you know, everything going on with the mom, and then the middle section when he's kind of coming into his sexuality and then ultimately just like flies off the handle and beats the shit out of him. Oh, that was awesome.
Oh, that was great where he hits that
so
kid with a chair.
I was like this
scene.
guy didn't just like go for it like this. It's like I'm gonna give this motherfucker the time of his life. But anyway, La La Land, good movie.
Exactly. So yeah, since I repeated 2016, you want to grab 2013 because I don't have anything from there?
Yeah.
2013 was a weak year.
2013 it's like the year of a lot of witness, but nothing that I would say is perfect. So the three that I go to are The Way, Way Back, Saving Mr. Banks, and you didn't? Yeah, that's right. You didn't like it. My favorite of the lot, the one that I think it left the most impact, is the one that is the most, it's the biggest one. Pacific Rim, baby.
Oh yeah, that was number 2 for a long time, and then I saw Mud and Her, so now it's like number 4. But
so I didn't see. What was your number 1 for that year?
Inside Llewyn Davis. For a long time, that was the number 1.
I did not like Inside Llewyn Davis. I'll give it another shot because I think it's shot beautifully. Mm-hmm. Bruno Del Bono does a fantastic job. Yes. But Pacific Rim is just so freaking awesome. And even the deficiencies of the movie work in its favor, especially after you watch Pacific Rim Uprising. And
well, yeah, it's the parts of that movie that are just so unforgivably stupid, you then find a way to forgive because they somehow enhance the appeal.
Of course. It's so good. And just, again, Charlie Hunnam. What do you mean? Mako's gonna be my partner as I go and fight these kaiju. All right, Pentecost. Like, fuck, dude. Idris Elba in kind of like the other coming out party for people who didn't know who he was. Mm-hmm. Giant monsters fighting giant robots. Swords that come out of nowhere, except for plot convenience. He's atomic, so he goes atomic in the middle of the ocean. Fuck, dude, the movie's so good. There's yeah.
Did you see it in 3D?
Yes, I saw it in 3D. I saw
some
it in
of the
2D.
best 3D I've seen in a long time, because it's like there's that bit where I think they're fighting in Tokyo or something, or maybe it's Hong Kong.
I think it's Shanghai actually.
And Gypsy Danger has to fight that one kaiju in the middle of the city, and it rise up out of the ocean, and it's raining, and the robot shakes off the rain in 3D, and it looks so fucking good.
Awesome. Well, the other thing is, for such a stupid movie, every single component of it was thoroughly thought out. You have a bunch of helicopters surrounding as some sort of light support or camera support, so that the people back home can see what's going on. The way that the drift works actually kind of makes sense, even if it's stupid.
Even if it's a weird contrivance.
Yeah, because we have to have everyone working as one. It's so great. And then It's just all the suiting up at the end. Fucking so good. All of the characters have, like, even though they're kind of like really dumb character moments, they each have character moments. And
Yeah.
you can't drift with a kaiju brain, but together we can. Like, oh yeah, dude, it's awesome. It's like fan service. It's like 100% fan service done right, but it's also aware enough that it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Well, it's interesting you say fan service because it's got a lot of fan service for a thing that has no fans. Like it didn't have a built-in fan base. It was like a new IP, but somehow created its own fan service within the runtime of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of the, well, it doesn't. I mean, they also build up the world to like give you the image that there is, you know, a built-in fan base of these guys. And Ron Perlman's in it. How could I forget about Ron Perlman?
What's a Guillermo del Toro movie without Ron Perlman or Doug Jones?
Yeah. Was Doug Jones in this one?
He wasn't, but
yeah. Well, you get one or the other. That's fine. Because look at Shape of Water.
Dude, Ron Perlman's been there since the beginning too, because he was like in Kronos speaking Spanish.
Oh my god, dude. Ron Perlman's awesome.
Yes.
It's like you get Ron Perlman and Clancy Brown as like two cops together in a cop movie. I want to see that, dude. As like old retired cops.
I still like, it's kind of like how I want Clancy Brown to play Lex Luthor in any future Justice League movies or whatever. Like I want Deathstroke to just be a body double, like a stunt man in a mask voiced by Ron Perlman.
And then when he takes off his mask, you get that Irishman CG of Ron Perlman's head like awkwardly flickering on it. What's up? But yeah, dude, Pacific Rim. I haven't watched it in a while, and I need to get a copy of it so I can rewatch it because it's just so awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome is definitely the way to describe it.
It's not a good film. It's a good movie.
Yes. It's not a great movie. It's an awesome movie.
It's not a great film. It's an awesome movie.
Yeah. Number 4 for me, I'm dipping back in. This is the third and final movie from 2014.
Wow.
So I have no 2019 movie on my list if you want to talk about 1917 again.
Yeah, I'll give it a couple minutes and then that's it.
Number 4 is It Follows.
Okay.
Which...
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a horror movie that I remember everyone talking about when it came out that no one has ever talked about since. Something about it seemed to really capture people's attention at that moment, and then it was just sort of forgotten. But it's really good, and it does supernatural horror, I think, in the best way possible, where like the subject of the movie is so horrifying that it almost can't be said out loud or shown on screen, but like everything is constantly hinting to it. And it's such an interesting movie. Like it's obviously very well made. It's very scary. It's very atmospheric and moody. The performances are all good. It's very aesthetically pleasing or displeasing when it needs to be. And it's very rich in subtext, so there's a lot to kind of dig into. It's great fodder for, like, you know, you go see the movie and grab dinner after and you're talking about it all night long kind of thing. It's one of the only, it might be the only horror movie that I could say is like perfect in every way. Like it is a perfect movie. I absolutely adore it. I think it's amazing. I don't want to say too much because I know you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I know. I've been really bad. Do you know if it's on Amazon? Do you know if it's on Prime?
Dude, just buy a Blu-ray from Amazon and plug it into your PlayStation. That's what I do a lot of the time. If a movie is something I really like or that I have a feeling I'm really going to like, I just buy it.
I should do that, especially there's like, yeah, we won't go into that part. I do really want to see It Follows, but you're under the belief that the less I know, the better for the movie. Because there's some movies where the more you know, it doesn't make a difference on the impact. But
it helps, I think, to have the movie's mysteries revealed to you firsthand rather than have anything explained to you ahead of time.
Okay.
And then you can always talk about it afterwards or look shit up on the internet or whatever.
Okay.
Because I think it's also one of those things where some of the more horrifying aspects are more horrifying if you come to realize them than if someone tells you, oh, this is what's happening.
Okay. All right. I'll put it on my short list. So 2019, it's funny because 2019 is 1917 for me, although I think in order to make it different than, last week's, I will say that I think in the long run, Parasite is going to, like, if we did this list in 10 years, I'm going to say I'd like to rewrite it and say that Parasite is the best movie. I think it's going to age better just because in the moment, I still really like 1917. I still really like the circular ending. I like all of the cameos. All the camera work is great. All the little moments. Like, it kind of does that thing that I don't know if you like, but I like in movies when we talk about where it's like, man, I really don't want to live in that era. Like, he puts his hand on the German soldier and his hand falls right through and it's all open wound and shit. And it's like,
oh, that was so gross.
That's so disgusting. And that hand's coming. I expected that hand to get like necrotic through the movie.
Oh yeah. Especially because that was the hand that had the cut on it from the
exactly.
The barbed wire.
That's why I thought they were going to play into that a little bit more, and they didn't. I guess it got washed when he jumped into the. I guess it got washed when the movie decided to just forget reality, and he jumps into the water in a waterfall. Like, there's a moment there.
It's funny because that scene where he accidentally reaches into the dead body with his hand that has the cut on it.
Yeah,
like that grossed me out so much because I have a habit for whatever reason of like just constantly slicing up and burning my fingers. Oh. So I'm always paranoid about them getting like infected or caught in some shit. So when I saw his hand go through there, I'm like, every cut on my hand like went like
yeah. Like I was like, when every time that happened, someone in the theater, usually everyone just goes, oh, like, oof. Also, fun fact about 1917, the role played by the guy who dies in everything I've seen him in, the young kid, whatever his name, the guy from Game of Thrones.
Baratheon.
Yes, that one. That role was originally offered to Tom Holland, which would have been horrible.
But he gets to get stabbed.
Even if you like Tom Holland would have been horrible in that role. Because do you really need another overly long death scene from Tom Holland? No.
Sure.
I don't. Avengers Infinity War is enough. I don't need to.
He also dies in The Lost City of Z.
He does, but not in an overly long...
Well, yeah, he dies off screen.
But again, I think he would have been bad because it's just too much star power. I like the fact that it's this... I like the guy that they chose. I thought he was perfect.
I fucking hate Tom Holland. He's so annoying in everything he's in.
I'm worried that he's getting too oversaturated. And the reason I'm worried is because you hate him in so many things, and I'm like, oh God, he's in this too? Why is he playing identical looking characters in Spies in Disguise and in the new Pixar movie Onward? Why do they look the same?
I don't know, man. Well, it's kind of like how all these animated movies have like a bajillion famous people instead of like legit voice actors.
I hate it. I hate it so much.
Now I guess they're fashioning their digital avatars to look more like the real people, so that it's like, hey, this movie has 30 different kind of famous folks, including 10 SNL washouts. Which is like, I hate that. Hire real voice actors to put on voices. Don't hire, let's get fucking Anthony Mackie to talk in his Anthony Mackie voice, because that'll be great for the kids. Nothing against Anthony Mackie. He's a great actor, but...
Is he though?
Yeah. Have you seen Half Nelson?
No, I haven't.
That's a good movie, and he's good in it.
I always think of 8 Mile, and I'm always like, whatever happened to Mekhi Phifer?
But it's just, voice acting should be done by voice actors. I believe that 100%. None of the stunt casting celebrities. So careless parents will sit in the movie with their kids and not be bored out of their mind, or will be encouraged to sit through the movie with their kids. It's like, I like that Jennifer Lawrence, and she's the voice of the squid in this movie. Fuck that shit.
It's so weird how that is actually a thing and a reason people go to see movies for. Like, with a couple of exceptions, for me, it tends to be really distracting, which I guess is why I like. I tend to like the Illuminations films because they'll cast these famous actors in the role, but then they'll like modulate their voice or have them do something different so that you can't really tell it's them. And like Disney's gotten better about going with more like offbeat personalities, but they're still not really going with voice acting personalities.
All right.
But yeah, 1917, pretty good. I think Parasite in the long run will be the more remembered movie.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, I think the last 3 movies on my list will probably match up with your top movies for the years they were in.
Okay. What's
number 3, another perfect movie is 2011's Drive.
That is funny. Go ahead.
Is it your pick for 2011?
It became it, yeah. On reflection, because I had The Raid as it, and I also really like Tintin because it's like the Indiana Jones movie that we never got. But Drive is by far the more iconic movie of that year.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Drive launched an entire genre of music. It is seared into the mind of everyone who watched it. Like, you know, I watched that. I was 16, very impressionable. I was just sort of realizing that I just love everything about movies, and like that movie is the one I always come back to, is like just having a huge impact on me, you know? Yeah. Like I can't get that movie out of my head, and I love everything about it. It's so fucking cool. It's so well done. It does all of the classic like crime stuff, but it does it in this really subtle way, especially with its visuals and with its music, and like the ending is great, and the fucking elevator scene is one of the greatest scenes ever. Like I can't say enough good things about it.
I will say one thing that we don't really talk about. The movie was perfectly cast.
Yes.
Top to bottom. Every actor was... And the thing was that it shouldn't have... none of the acting choices should have worked, but Refn was so confident that they would work. Like Albert Brooks, I think it's probably still one of Albert Brooks's favorite roles because it's not like anything else. I think we said it before. Go watch Taxi Driver and then go watch Drive. Like, so he's great in it. Bryan Cranston. If you binged all of Breaking Bad and then you watch this, you're like, what the hell?
But if you watch Malcolm in the Middle, it makes perfect sense.
Then you're like, oh yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Oscar Isaac, like pre-Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Like he had to be cast as like the hoodlum.
Yeah, random Hispanic hoodlum played by Oscar Isaac back in those days.
Yeah, played by just like some guy who had to shave his head. Like it's weird to see how far he's come, but he's good in it. Carey Mulligan's good in it. Ryan Gosling, of course, is like is the stable ship that writes it. Does what's his name? Jamie Lannister, is he in the beginning of the movie? Like
what?
Like I thought that he might have like been in the beginning when like Ryan Gosling does the first job. I thought that might have been Jamie Lannister, but
I don't think so. He's not mentioned as being in it.
Okay. It's also funny because like the structure of Drive kind of reminds me a lot of Baby Driver, especially the first like 30 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But fuck, dude, I would rather just watch Drive over and over again. No offense to Edgar Wright, because he's great. It's just amazing how Drive comes on the scene and it just like becomes iconic.
Yes.
From the jacket to the music to the lighting.
I think
to the violence.
It's the one like original movie. It's the one original creation of the last decade that has become this cultural icon.
Agreed.
All right, number 2. 2012's The Master, another perfect movie.
This is where we're going to differ.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is Paul Thomas Anderson's best movie. Like I said, perfect in every way. I love all the technical aspects, but I mean, the star of the show is really, it's the performances you get from, well, it's the script for one, but it's the performances you get from Joaquin Phoenix and Philip Seymour Hoffman, where they, not just how they play off each other, but also how it's one of those rare things where every line and every action and everything that they do, every aspect of their performance has to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. Every word is communicating 2 or 3 different things. Where it's like there's text, subtext, and subtext for everything. And that is so impossibly complicated and so rare. that for it to be done and to be done this perfectly is really an achievement. And then on top of that, it's how these polyphonic performances play off each other.
Mm-hmm. It's also another movie where there's no real weak link, and I was amazed when I found out that the whole movie was shot on film and that they did a unique process in order to make sure that the saturation levels were to a certain degree. And the only reason I mention that is because in the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie, when you see the water on the boat as it's lapping, and it's like the most beautiful water you've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Like that image just stayed with me. That image, the image of when they're talking, when Joaquin Phoenix is talking with Dodd, and like Joaquin Phoenix gives him the alcohol and he's drinking that and he's like, okay, well, all right, fine, I'll do it on you. That whole scene is just amazing.
Oh yeah,
just fantastic.
The what is it? Processing.
Yeah, the
scene?
processing. I believe that's what it's called.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good.
It also has a very young and very weird Rami Malek in it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, he's one of the cult members.
Oh my god. Speaking of Rami Malek, he's in a Tom Hanks movie called Larry Crown, and he plays the stoned community college student. It's so
goodness.
weird. It's so weird to see how far he's come from playing Steve Dubayasi.
All right, what's your top movie of 2012?
My top movie of 2012. It's funny because I had a hard time with this one because 2012 is stacked. My favorite movie was Skyfall, but I think the most important. So that's the one that I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you have a love. I know you have a love-hate with it, but I have just a lot of love in general for it. Although I think the most important movie of that year is The Avengers. And it's weird
I don't want to talk
that.
about The Avengers.
I won't. I'm not going to talk about it, but that movie completely changed cinema landscape.
Oh yeah.
In 2012 going forward. And it did it in a really good way, but there were unintended consequences to the movie that created an interesting ripple effect that has kind of destroyed cinema in a way.
Yep. According to Martin Scorsese.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that as far as like if you rewatch the original Avengers movie, it is so dorky. It is so comic booky in a good way. And it's in a way that is completely missing from the comic book movies that we see now. So like I still have a soft spot for that first Avengers movie, but Skyfall is good, is much better than that. Dread came out in 2012. That was shortlisted. I don't like The Master as much as you, but I haven't seen it in a long time. I saw it the one time, and so I think it's due for a rewatch. But Skyfall was kind of everything that worked really well about Casino Royale mixed with everything that worked about the older Sean Connery movies, and then they added a dash of like prestige cinema salt on it.
Yeah.
Put it in a blender, shot it out, and then added Albert Finney as no, not Albert Finney. Yeah, Albert Finney. As Kincaid, who is my favorite character in the movie.
Yeah, you've mentioned you enjoy his weird sexual advances.
Weird sexual advances, foreplay, and how he's just like completely outmatched to everything that's going on. But he's just so damn charming in the movie. The movie has a serious problem with female characters, as does every single Daniel Craig James Bond movie.
Well, as does every James Bond movie, conceivably.
I guess. It seemed like some of the aspects were getting better in the Pierce Brosnan movies. Like, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Christmas Jones, but it was a step in the right direction, as was Halle Berry's Jinx, even if Jinx kind of fell flat. But in this, like, the main Bond girl that they promote, it was part of the sex trade. After revealing that, Bond and her get on a boat and they bang, and there's just something that feels gross about that.
Yep.
I don't know what it is, but there's something
it's
that
a little
feels
weird.
Gross.
I mean, my biggest...
Just a little.
I like the movie for the most part. I love the first, like, 2/3. I think I've said this a bajillion times, but that... Batman
The first
Begins...
2/3 are amazing.
Yeah, that Batman Begins ending, though, just... I find so frustrating.
I like that it becomes a tower defense simulator at the end, but it would have been better if like they went hard R and had Bond like literally gut Javier Bardem's throat out of him.
Well, it would be better if
You
it
gotta
was
do
a
it the
tower
old
defense
way.
scenario in a different tower, or, you know, Javier Bardem is portrayed as this big hacker guy, which
Yeah.
totally gets abandoned in the last third of the movie. It also doesn't help that the entire color palette of that last act is yellow. And then the entire color palette of Batman Begins after the
Is
first
yellow.
act is yellow. Which, again, it makes it even more Batman Beginsy. And it's just, it felt so much like Batman Begins. I'm like, I can't get through this.
It's funny. I always wondered why people said that, because I've heard they were. I think you've said it and Austin said it's like, oh, Sam Mendes doing his best to rip off Christopher Nolan. I was like, how? The rest of the movie doesn't feel anything like Batman
Well,
Begins.
exactly. It's just that the climax of the movie feels like Batman Begins, which is the one part you don't want to feel like Batman Begins.
I still like. I mean, I can understand like because it's yellow, but the movie's kind of segmented into different, into different color schemes, and it had to be yellow because it was shot at night, and that's how cameras, process the color information and all that, digital cameras. But like, I don't know. I thought, as opposed to Spectre, I thought it was just enough of James Bond's past coming forward that it was interesting. I still like the whole idea of like they have to defend their space and they have to defend M. I think the way that she dies is kind of like goofy, but I also think that closing action scene, especially with like the tiered moments of like, oh, we'll send in the first squad, we'll send in a bigger second squad, we'll send in the helicopters, like the movie's already long, cut that down a little bit, but like everything, but like having an ending like that doesn't ruin the rest of the movie. And I like the fact that Bond has no weapons when he's going into this thing. They're like, oh, we got to figure it out with Bondian intelligence. So I think that's a cool moment. So, okay,
So-
we've come to it.
Number one movie of the decade, which I'm sure will be the same for you, and also your top movie of 2015, is none other than our podcast's namesake, Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh man, this is awkward.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I'm kidding you, dude. Of course it's Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck?
I don't think I know we've talked about a lot of movies changing the game, but I don't think any movies changed the game as hardcore as Mad Max Fury Road did. Like, let's be 100% clear.
I disagree with that. I think Mad Max
Really?
Fury Road. I think Mad Max Fury Road is one of the greatest movies of all time, and had no discernible impact on the film industry.
Ooh.
The industry decided to move on as if it had never happened, and just keep falling into the same bad habits that Mad Max Fury Road was. It almost seems like it was designed to break. Like it's like we're in an era of shitty, garbage CGI, shaky cam, edited to pieces action. Mad Max Fury Road was one of the first movies in a long time with practical effects, practical stunts, perfectly shot by a master of the
Veteran
art
master,
form.
yeah.
In the Twilight years, who's had decades and decades and decades to sharpen his skill to this level of perfection. It's everyone bitches and moans about how movies, especially blockbusters and action movies, treat their female characters in Mad Max Fury Road seem to be almost designed as like an antidote to that. That was completely ignored. Tom Hardy is the title character, the greatest actor of a generation in the role of a lifetime. Still, Tom Hardy gets no love. It's just.
So let me revise what I said. You're familiar with like I'm gonna put Malcolm Gladwell's name out here. He always presents these stories of like, oh, we did this, we revolutionized everything, and the lessons everyone got from them were the wrong ones. That's what Mad Max Fury Road was, because when I look at it, like there was a lot of digital manipulation in it. There was a lot of sky replacements, but like the color palette was copied by a lot of movies. The whole idea of like oversaturation was brought back into vogue. Action movies with prestige. But you're right. It seemed like all of the important lessons they could learn from this movie, they completely forgot about.
Like how to structure and shoot and edit an action sequence.
Or
Ignored.
how to build interesting, like how to build complexities in the action scenes, like the good old action scenes. Like, oh, it's not just enough that like Max has to has to disconnect this thing, but also this person's trying to kill him, and Furiosa's dying in the corner, and they've run out of ammo, and it's like, and all of it builds in such a great way.
Or how to deliver exposition and character background through like incidental visuals and throwaway lines of dialogue and like just little touches and details.
So good.
That's a lot.
Or how to pace your movie properly to make it seem like one thing, but actually it's another. Because like everyone's like, oh, it's one big long action ride. It's like, you're right. That moment with the tree, that was so action-packed. No, it was a good, quiet moment to lead into the next one.
The moment where everyone's standing around on their motorcycles chatting about what to do next, now that they're completely safe and out of danger. That was so action-packed and full of tension.
Man, all the shaky cam. Or it's weird because it's like all of the chaos of it was under such great control in the action scenes. And people thought it had something to do, I have no idea what they were thinking, but they've tried to replicate, I'm sure they've tried to replicate things like that, and they just don't know what makes it so great. You're right. I apologize. You are correct.
No need to apologize. But it's just, it's one of those things where it's like, it's a shame that a lot of the lessons that are in that movie didn't seem to get taken to heart, especially because, like Hobbs and Shaw is so terrible, but it could have been so much better, even if the story was still shit, if they took kind of the technical lessons that Fury Road had presented, but they didn't. I mean, we did an entire episode about it back in the old days of the original podcast.
I think we're due for another one.
I guess.
It's
but yeah, I mean,
it's 5-year anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, it's a movie that's so good. Our podcast logo is based on it. It's fucking called Under the Wheels. When she went under the wheels. And our rating system is based on primarily on lines of dialogue from the movie. I mean, I don't think there's enough words in the dictionary or any thesaurus to say how great this movie is. Like, this is a top 5 all-time great movie, and I think we're very fortunate that it was released not only in our lifetime, but at a point where we were like grown up enough to
actually be able
see
to enjoy it in the moment
and get it and enjoy it in the moment. Yeah.
Do you remember? I remember the advertising campaign came out, and like the way that they threw superlatives around, like from Mastermind George Miller, and I was like, what the fuck are they talking? Because I had heard of Mad Max. They played reruns of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome on one of the channels over and over again. But I was like, okay, Mad Max is back. Oh, it's Tom Hardy, before I really knew who Tom Hardy was and seen him in anything really amazing. Yeah. I'm like, okay, Tom Hardy's in it. All right. I remember him in freaking This Means War, the movie I avoided like the plague. Okay, this might be interesting. And like, is that Charlize Theron? That's not Charlize Theron. That doesn't look anything like her. What's with this weird music? Like, it's kind of cool. I'm like, they're trying really hard to get me in the theater. Yeah. And then but like the more I saw the trailer, the more I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if this movie was like the greatest fucking movie ever? And guess what? It was pretty damn close.
Much was, yeah. I mean, I was a fan of The Road Warrior for a long time when I was a kid, and then when I saw the trailer for Mad Max Fury Road for the first time, like my jaw just hit the floor. I was so insanely hyped for it.
I can't believe they got it made.
Me neither. I was so hyped for it when I saw that trailer, and it totally delivered. And it's one of those things where it's like, it's this big, crazy, thrilling action movie, but it's got like really great, like heartfelt moments, and it's got really great performances. Like Tom Hardy's performance in the movie is a masterclass on how to act through physicality. Because I think the aspect of performance that everyone focuses on is like, how good are you at screaming and crying? Which is what they hand out Oscars for. It's like, oh, Leo DiCaprio screamed and cried really good. Here's the statue. Whereas Tom Hardy goes from being a vicious, animalistic killer with no soul to being a human again, all through like his posture, the way he walks, the way he forms his words, the way he interacts with objects, the way he carries himself physically reflects that change. And like, that's so fucking hard to do, but it's so good.
It's funny because like I remember my first issue with the movie was like, man, I wish Tom Hardy were in it more. The more
I wish you were too.
the more you watch it though, it's just like no, I can see like he's in it a great amount. It's got a great ending. With it's just so simple, just him walking away, like it's great.
Well, and not only does he walk away, but it's like he walks away, and then you kind of like look up and look back, and he's gone.
Yeah,
Like he just vanishes. Like that's the end. Like the ending of The Road Warrior is one of the greatest endings ever, and I think Mad Max Fury Road kind of perfectly captures that same essence. Like The Road Warrior begins with Mad Max standing in the middle of the highway as like dust is blowing in front of the screen, and the camera like pushes in slowly on him and is like fearsome in Mel Gibson's like fearsome face, while the narrator says like it's like when the world fell, blah blah blah, times were hard, but there was one man, the man they call Max, the Road Warrior, and he's like talking about the legend of Mad Max and stuff, and then the movie starts. So the movie ends with that shot played backwards, where it's like it starts off on Mel Gibson's face staring directly into the camera and then pulls back slowly as the screen is overcome by dust. And, the narrator's like, he sort of goes on to talk about the happy ending of the movie and is like, and as for Max, that was the last we ever saw of him. He lives on, only in my memories. And I always get chills whenever I see that. But like
it explains a lot about you and how you analyze movies. It really does.
But like that ending is kind of Mad Max Fury Road. I think does kind of the less that's like the 70s version of that ending. Mad Max Fury Road is the modern version of that ending, where it's like you've been through so much over the course of this movie, and you finally have that happy ending, which feels triumphant and earned in the way a lot of happy endings don't feel. They feel obligatory, and then. Yeah, Max just, Furiosa looks at him, looks away, looks back, and he's gone.
It's got such a fucking great name, too. Fucking Mad Max Fury Road.
I know.
It's weird. It's one of those weird times where, like, the Academy was handing out their awards, and Mad Max was sweeping all of the technical awards, and it was like, this feels right.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it going. This
best actor,
right.
best picture, best director.
And the shit hit. Well, I don't think he was nominated for best actor.
Which is a shame because he should have.
They could have given it to him for. No, I guess that wasn't that year. I was gonna say, was it? Was that the same year as Legend?
No, that was the Revenant year. Which that was the same year as Legend.
Yeah. So like they should have just given it to him by default. They've been like, you know what, dude? Here's the life. Here it. We're giving it to you for Legend. But it's really for Fury Road. But his performance is just too, like, it's not flashy enough for most people. Like, I watched it twice and started getting it after the second time.
Again, because the awards are like, Leonardo DiCaprio screamed and cried really good. Here is the gold statue.
The internet says Leonardo DiCaprio is good actor. We need to give him an award.
I know.
Because he gives us a lot of money.
But yeah, it's just it's... Tom Hardy nails all the most essential aspects of performance that I think tend to get overlooked. Because it's like, it's one thing to say your lines well, it's one thing to make faces well, but it's something completely different to transform your entire body, your way of moving and interacting with the world to fit a character.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I still can't watch Venom, but he's a lot of fun in Venom. Maybe I'll do what I do with Lockout and just buy the movie and just skip ahead to all the Tom Hardy scenes, make a supercut.
I know Venom is so terrible, but Tom Hardy is so much fun.
Oh my god, when he starts eating the live live lobster, it's just fucking god, dude. I love Tom Hardy. He's so awesome. When is he gonna be in another movie? What's his next movie aside from Venom?
I'm still waiting.
He might be in that Morpheus movie. God forbid.
I'm hoping he shows up in Tenet or something. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they already have Michael Caine. So, like, we have to make sure everyone who's a fan of Christopher Nolan know that Michael Caine's in this movie. Right?
Michael Caine's his good luck charm. He puts him in everything.
Everything that he's done really well, and it's got Michael Caine. I was actually kind of disappointed when Michael Caine was like, 1917 is the best war movie I've ever seen. I'm like, dude, you were in Dunkirk.
Come on.
He was also in Zulu, which I've heard is
was.
pretty good.
Yeah, I've heard it's pretty good too. Apparently, the beginning of the Battle of Helm's Deep, where they're all just chanting at each other, was inspired by Zulu. I mean, my favorite part of that is it's like Orlando Bloom's only joke in the entire movie, where he's like, "Shall I describe it to you, or would you like a box?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's good. That's clever. Good for you." God, Fury Road's so good. I need to rewatch it again. I had the luxury of watching it at home with surround sound, and it was awesome.
That's nice.
There's only a couple of reasons to have surround sound, and that's one of them.
Yeah. Fury Road and Das Boot, and not much else. I've heard from a lot of people that the only movie that like a home theater system really enhances is Das Boot. Like for whatever reason, that's the one that's like perfect for home theater watching. Otherwise, the 2.1 is fine.
2.1 is pretty good for the most part. I would think though that certain horror movies would be really good.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because they, but
as
only
much as
if they have the budget.
As much as I don't like Split, the sound mixing in that movie is really good for surround sound. Because it does have that, like, a lot of the music and a lot of the sound effects have that feeling of, like, crawling from your left, up over your head, behind you, and back down to your right. And so that could be captured really well in, like, a complete surround sound system. I've already wasted too many words on Split.
Yeah. Let's move back to the good movie, Mad Max Fury Road. Just remember the guy with the giant guitar that spewed fire.
I know.
God. You know what? It was a pretty good decade. There's some movies we didn't talk about that were fantastic.
Well, there's a lot of movies that were phenomenal that we didn't talk about, but we only discussed the best on the show.
Well, we try to, but we didn't discuss Dredd, so it's kind of I mean, like, how best can we be talking about? But I digress. We've also, I feel like we've pushed forward the medium of, did my recorder stop recording and then start again?
Uh-oh.
We'll find out. This will be fun. This will be a fun edit. Make sure that you
Wait, we pushed the medium of what?
Oh, sorry. We pushed the medium of top 10s.
Oh, yeah.
By doing it in a very weird, non-linear way.
We're the Quentin Tarantino of top 10 lists.
No. We're the Jean
even
Luc
worse.
Godard.
We're the John. I was gonna say, you fucking stole it right out the words right out of my mouth. Yeah,
Dude,
we're even
we have to
worse.
bring
We're the
it back.
Jean Luc Godard of the top 10 list.
See, we're professionals. We always bring it back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you follow the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or Google.
Yes, like us on Facebook. It has links to our website. It's got the podcast as well as like articles and whatnot. I think some of the stuff that we talk about, I'll probably start putting in show notes for the podcast if people I think people might find some value in that. I remember there's one episode where we like very winkingly reference a specific YouTube video. It might be good to just give credit to that person in the show notes.
Yeah, right. We're talking about Lindsay Ellis's review of the second half of Game of Thrones.
Exactly. That's exactly what we were talking about. So yeah, I mean, if we can drive like the 3 people who listen to the show to Lindsay Ellis, that would be
awesome.
Win.
That would be awesome because, more people need to know how bad Phantom of the Opera is. Let's see, what else? Email us, underthewheelsblog@gmail.com. Please,
it's
we
Under
love...
it's underthewheelspodcast@gmail.com.
It is underthewheelspodcast@gmail.com. I am a terrible host. This explains a lot. Shit. Yeah, anything else you have to add?
No, man. We covered like fucking everything. We covered the Oscars and the entire 2010s. So
I know.
We're set.
I think we are.
I've been thinking like I hope this podcast gets to a size where we could conceivably do a Patreon. Because like and here the only reason I want a Patreon is I don't want to do the podcast full time. I don't expect people to pay me to do this. All I want is like I don't want to see Birds of Prey. But if I have to see Birds of Prey so we can talk about it here, I want someone else to pay for the ticket.
I should just start sending you the tickets, shouldn't I? Oh, here's an AMC ticket. Here, go ahead. Have at it, Gabe. Here's an AMC ticket. So not only do you have to see the movie that you don't want to see, but now you have to see it in a theater you don't necessarily want to see it in because it's gross. It's clean, but it's gross.
I don't know why AMCs are gross. They just are. Or at least the AMCs I always end up at are gross.
Yeah, I don't have ArcLight out here, so I can't send you to the good theater. That's expensive.
Oh, dude, ArcLight that's too expensive for me. I'm not that bougie. I'm a Regal man, or Edwards as they used to be called.
I'm a Regal man. Yes, I am. Movies at Regal is all I can. We actually have Regal cinemas out here too. So
okay.
They do not have them in Northern California.
Well, it's just where I'm at. Edwards used to be the biggest theater chain, and then it got bought by Regal, so now they're all Regal.
I mean, that would be a good topic to talk about. Maybe how like across the board we have a vertical integration of cinema death.
Yeah,
the theaters are killing it.
The death of industry.
But the theaters are dying because cinema's dying because of the theaters themselves, irregardless of how movies are distributed. It's also dying because of how movies are distributed, irregardless. And movies are dying because of the way the studios are operating. Like at every single level, movies are dying. And I don't know if that'd be something to talk about, but I find that really interesting to speculate on.
Can an entire art form be suicidal? Find out next time on Under the Wheels.
I think on that note, my name is Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And you have just gone under the wheels.
Yeah, I'm recording.
All right, I'm recording too. I'm realizing while I'm editing the top 10 episode, I'm like, we don't have really that much for an afterwards stinger. So I was like, I should have been recording when you were like, oh, I'm recording already.
Yeah, that's why I start recording like as soon as you call, because I figured like I like that end of the episode stuff. So I want to give you some material.
I just have gotten into the habit of putting Harrison Ford saying finished at the end of every episode.
I like that touch.
Okay, good. Well. Good, okay. I wasn't sure if you liked it or not, but I thought I would ask you eventually. Good. I'm going to keep putting it there then, because I love putting that in there. It's just like a nice little like... You realize that Harrison Ford has slowly raised in the ranks of like under the wheels actors that are our go-to.
Finished.